Okay.
Hey.
Welcome, guys.
Evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jonathan, and welcome to Mecha Pew Pew. I'm accompanied with my co-host, Ariel. How are you, Ariel?
Hey, guys. Good. Thanks, John. Doing well. Just want to say hi to everybody both watching on YouTube and on Twitch. We are simulcasting both on those platforms. And guys, we have an awesome show for you guys. We have some really, really cool, I think they're called pro modelers. I think they do stuff. Really cool guys from different parts of the world. Well, mainly North America, but you've probably seen them around. Why don't we do some quick introductions,
Exactly.
John?
Sure, absolutely. Let's introduce some of our guests. Let's start with Nicolas Tejada Sanchez, a 2019 GWC Canada winner. I would also say a weathering enthusiast. And tell us more about yourself, Nicolas.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy to be here. Oh, by the way, thank you for that song. It's gonna be stuck in my head for the entire night.
Good.
That's the point. Brainwashing it.
You're welcome.
Actually, I started this hobby like 5 years ago, so I'm pretty new, learning it still. And I'm happy to say that I'm very honored that I have this legend right on top of me right now.
You're welcome, man. Anytime, man. I feel really honored about that. I wouldn't say
I'm
legend.
a big fan. I'm a huge fan, and I have your book, and I use a lot of your stuff for inspiration. And I learned scale from you, scale with stuff.
Beautiful, amazing. Thank you, Nicolas. Let's jump on to Andrew. Andrew has been here before. Andrew
He's back.
I haven't been on Mecha Pew Pew before.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, you've talked a lot of stuff. But Andrew, a OMC 2020 winner, third place at GWC East 2020, placed in various local modeling tournament in Mecha and Sci-Fi. Tell us more about that, Andrew.
I like to build models, like to build mecha. I do all kinds of different stuff, but a lot of mecha, and I normally build for competitions just because that drives me to finish. If I don't have goals, I don't have timelines like that, I don't get finished. So that's what drives me.
Great. Honestly, I feel you. Timelines that has been pushing a lot of stuff, making sure that everything is done at some point, right? Otherwise, it can be pushed for years and years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Andrew.
Oh, our third guest, you guys probably have seen his work. Amazing modeler, author, builder. This guy has done so many conventions. I think like a handful of them in the last couple of years, especially in North America and in Toronto, Canada. Yeah, several books, incling this guy right here.
We all have his
I know we all have his books. Also,
mine is
we should have all brought it up just for.
I know, right? I go.
Coupon at Hobby Lobby or whatever it was, 40% off.
Oh, really?
There's a crazy sale right now in Hobby Lobby for like 30-40% off a whole bunch of stuff. But they can also
get their coupon or something. Yeah, they're one item coupon for 40 cents. They're canceling, so they're putting everything on sale to appease the customer.
Oof.
Oh my God! Also, Michael here, his book, you could purchase that as well. I think USA Gundam Store carries your line on their website.
Mm-hmm. They do.
Awesome.
They do.
And for those guys who might not know you as well, do you mind doing a little bit of intro about yourself?
Yeah, well, we did an interview, 5 months ago?
I know.
So I would think fans of your show should at least know this part.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this, this is going to year 9 for publishing for RSP, Rinaldi Studio Press, and the books and stuff. And last year was a big year in terms of what you guys like to talk about in particular. And as you mentioned, USA Gundam Store. We're working with them directly to produce some new titles for 2021 and beyond. So we're excited about that, and there's a lot more Gundam stuff and sci-fi in general. And I've built an empire kind of on the military historical side. A lot of kids are familiar with tank art books, but we are moving into kind of broadening, the scopes of everything, and it'll include a lot of science fiction subjects. And Bandai will be a huge part of that because they make a lot of good stuff. Yeah. Both Star Wars, Gundam, and quite a few things, to be honest with you.
What tank art number are we on right now? Because I know I have number 3 here. Number 4 should be.
We're only up to 4.
right?
That's all
Yeah.
we've ever done is 4. We've been in kind of a reprint, get them back in stock. They're big money for my company, so I need to have them to sell to actually make money to do other things, such as print new books. It's kind of a process for me, but we're getting there. We're doing last 6 months have been a lot better. We've got some new suppliers. Tank Art 4 just got reprinted, which is this book, and this is so they go by this one's German. I think Ariel, you've got modern.
Yes, I do. Modern one.
So,
and
they go by subject matter. World War II subject matter, modern subject matter, World War One, some other stuff coming, and then we'll be moving into aircraft, science fiction, as I mentioned, and then some civilian stuff. Quite a bit of civilian stuff, railroads, trucks.
Awesome.
Anything that gets beat up and weathered, it's fair game. So that's what we're moving into. Yeah,
Great. Perfect
Right
subject for
on.
the show.
So tonight's topic, dirty talk. Our topic is weathering. Our topic is going to be a little bit of like, I guess, questions and answers involved. If you guys have any questions at all, guys, that you guys want to ask our guest tonight, don't forget to type question in front of the chat. I will check that out and try to get that question up to these guys, and we'll have a conversation that way. We do have some kind of talking points for us tonight, but feel free to have questions during any of the topics, and we will try to get that to you. Don't forget also for guys at YouTube, we do have super chat available for the channel. And donations you guys put towards the channel puts it towards upgrading either equipment or production value for the show. So thank you guys in advance.
Amazing.
All right, so that's my sales pitch.
Yeah, let's jump. Well, subject is weathering, right? So I have a question for you. In your own word, define weathering as bad as you can.
Ooh, I like this. Let's start. Yeah. I want to start with Andrew.
Okay.
Let's do that.
It's making your stuff look like shit. It's like taking the best work you can do and making it look worse.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Let's go with Nico on this one. Describe weathering as bad as you can.
Well, in my case, is to get something that has seen a lot of shit.
Yes.
Has been through shit. That has been through shit. There goes all your sponsorship for this video.
Yeah, I know. We're totally not monetized anymore. I should have watched that.
No more monetization.
All right. Michael, what do we got? Sell me the worst description of weathering.
The worst description of it's just being nasty and dirty, Just getting dirty in the mud. That's what it is, man. Get it dirty.
That is awesome.
We all like
nice. Beautiful. Me? Oh, sure, I guess.
Yeah.
I would say ruining your model, but in a nice way.
That's kind of what I said.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. What about you, Ariel?
I'm thinking about it now. How do I describe weathering? You know your favorite like prized possession, and for all of a sudden you just want to change it, and you just like run it through everything, throw it off a cliff, roll through the mud, anything, just to like feel something. Wow, that
is so
deep,
weird.
Eric. That was deep.
That was deep. Yeah, that's it.
I feel it right here.
Amazing.
There.
Oh, that was good. That was great. I liked it. But
we have a quick question here. Does using actual dirt and mud count as weathering? Ooh, we're gonna get to that.
Really? Oh. So okay,
that's for the RC crowd.
Yeah. Nice. But on all seriousness, subject basically. So basically defining the subject, weathering. What we can say, we try to coin it, and everybody can tell us if we're wrong, as always. Weathering is the effects of environment on materials and surfaces in scale modeling that is apparent in armor, metal, and related materials. Effects can be rusting, muddy, or corrosion, and oxidation, and so much more. I guess that defines it, but what do you guys think?
What's weathering to you? I think that's the question that we're gonna be.
That's a much better question. Yeah.
All right. Why don't we? Anyone want to take her? Let's go with Michael for that one. Let's start with him. Michael, what's weathering to you?
The simplest term for me is weathering is storytelling. Weathering is the story of the vehicle, and it's a snapshot in time for a lot of it. If you do a specific moment, It's capturing that subject matter, that vehicle, that whatever it is in that particular moment in time. And how did they get from point A to point B? And point B is where you're showing it. So you've got whatever that backstory is, and that's what weathering is. It's actually storytelling. Getting it dirty is just a byproduct. You know, grease and grime and chips and scratches. That's just a byproduct of what the vehicle's been through. So I've always counted it as we're storytellers. That's why I call everybody an author, because I think scale modeling is you're telling a story in a visual setting, 3D setting. So that's what I think.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Beautiful.
Let's go, Andrew. What's weathering to you, man?
Yeah, it's the same as a big part of it's the narrative, and the other thing is establishing an environment, especially if it's not in a diorama. The weathering helps you to establish the environment that it's in.
Nice. Well put. Well put. Nico, you've been weathering a lot. Like when you look at your weathering, like what does weathering mean to you when you approach it?
Well, I also like storytelling and all that, but also when you weather your model is what's gonna make it more like a realistic piece and not a toyish piece in a way.
Mm.
So all what we said here and plus that.
Nice.
Like I mean, because you can have a model and then you and drop it in the mud and be all dirty and it just looks like your toy got dirty. But if you weather it and everything, it just looks like it's like a realistic depiction of an
Yeah.
Right on.
something like that.
Right on.
Nice. Well, I think personally, on the same as everyone, right? Actually, it's just storytelling, and as Nicolas said, it's going adding realism to a model, changing it from a model to a realistic piece, right? So, yeah. What about you, Ariel?
Weathering to me is I'm not good at weathering. I'll be honest. I appreciate it when a story is well said or depicted in the images I see that are inspirational. Weathering to me does show arts and craftsmanship of the person that's working on it. But yeah, to all your points again, the story from like A to B, I think I like that analogy the most, Michael, because like you are seeing it after it's gone through stuff, and the thing is, it could still keep going, right? That the story doesn't really end there. It's just more of like a snapshot of where it's at a particular time of its journey.
Yeah.
Weathering to me definitely gives it that realistic, real world feel, and it gives it weight. By that I mean it's like it's not just plastic model anymore. It's an actual, like, you know, a scaled version of something that's real in something you would see in person.
Yeah.
So
It's like you're transforming the plastic into, for example, metal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Creating a real material instead of creating plastic that's painted. Right?
To Nico's comment a bit, because I think it's important. I come from largely historical subject matter where everything's weathered. Everybody paints and weathers. And I think one key aspect of this conversation between you guys is that there's a whole world of Gundam in particular, that the clean build, if you will. That's a huge part of this hobby in terms of the Gundam side of scale modeling. And that's an important point that what Nico, I think he's trying to say is there's that side of it, because you could sand the plastic because Bandai provides that to us in the color, or you can paint it. And then the next level is to take it from that very clean, beautiful form of a robot that we love to see. And I do like them as well. Just because I weather a lot doesn't mean I don't like the clean build, but weathering is taking it into the realm of what this world talks about in terms of science fiction in particular. Because you don't even see it with Star Wars per se. Like you never see a clean Star Wars. You don't see a clean Millennium Falcon. It doesn't exist. So, but you see a clean RX-78 because it exists in both anime form and scale model form as out of the kit or out of the box, and then you see it as painted and painted, and then you even see it as so you have these levels of Gundam stuff that I think realistically that's a great comment, because it does relate. We don't see that on the historical side. Everybody paints and weathers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's just part of the process.
Right.
Unless you're like a race car modeler, that's probably the only other real category, or pristine ships and stuff are a similar category. And the ship guys too have it broken down in competition as like I forget what they call it, but it's like museum quality, and then there's actual like realistic ship quality. They break them down because of the painting and weathering. So it does have divisions regarding, you know, the realistic of, you know, from plastic to metal and the representation and so on and so forth.
I do like the concept of how can I say it? Storytelling, and I want to add to this in some way that adding dirt to a kit for adding dirt is not important, right? No, like it doesn't add to your model by just slabbering whatever dirt you want on it. It's by creating the story and thinking about the story first and the weathering after, because you say it's a medium, and that's the key point to it. Yeah,
perfect topic. Actually, I want to segue a little bit in towards storytelling, because you guys obviously have different backgrounds in how you guys approach stuff. Could you tell us, like, maybe where you guys got started in weathering? What were your first models, or what were your first experiences like? Why don't we start with Nico? What do we got, man?
How did I start on this? Well, it's interesting. I never in my life was interested in building models, but for some reason, when the new Star Wars movies came out, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and when I collect action figures and all sorts of things, but I didn't have a lot of stuff from Star Wars. But when the new movies came out, like, they started releasing new Star Wars stuff, and I decided to buy a Millennium Falcon for myself. And for some reason, when I got it, I wanted to make it look like the one in the movie. So I asked my girlfriend if she could lend me her makeup kit.
Nice.
And I weathered it. And after I finished that, actually, if you share my screen, I can show you a picture of it.
Oh, you had your first
weathered model? Nice.
Yeah. Not only that, I have it here. And it still makes sounds.
Wait, it makes noise.
This is functional, dude. That is so cool that it's still functional.
Yeah.
It's not that old. It's not super old. It's the Rebel toy. It's like this model is like 10 pieces put together. Oh, so God. In this, I basically started with weathering before I started painting, because I will get these models and I will just add makeup to them. Like, for example, this was my second. This was the X-Wing. And again, did the same thing, added makeup to it. But here I realized that I can only take this so far. So after this model, I started watching YouTube videos and everything, and then I start experimenting more until this day. But basically, that's how I started. That's how my journey with this started. Weathering started me into this hobby.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that, Nico.
Nice.
Why don't we? That's awesome. We're gonna circle back to some of your work in a bit. Andrew, how about you, man? Can you tell us a little bit about your first experiences or like attempts at weathering? What was that like?
Oh man, yeah, similar to Nico there. I had to source materials because I didn't have anything. It wasn't as readily available then as it is now. So I ended up getting chalk pastels from an art store and grinding them all up in order to make a weathering pigment. And then I used that to create like a rust effect combined with salt chipping, which I'd heard of, but I didn't really know how to do. So I ended up making like a salt slurry, mixing it with which worked, but that is not how people typically do the salt chipping technique.
Right on. Cool. And speaking of salt and pepper, when I say salt and pepper, salt and pepper, salt and chipping technique, something that you obviously have talked significantly about on your books and as well in your your live shows.
I was trying to remember, like, when I read the question, like, this goes probably back like 2004 when I kind of came back into the as a scale model builder. This is when the internet forums were kind of happening, and this is the early. So a lot of you guys are familiar with Ammo by Mega Menace and AK Interactive and the products so the Mig himself, the person, developed these back in the early 2000s, and that's kind of my first introduction to, I guess you would say, the contemporary form of weathering in the manners that we kind of do talk about today. But in my library of stuff, because there was that point where we're little kids, maybe 10, 15, for me, I'm 50, so that's what, 70, 85, 1980-ish, 10 years oldish, maybe somewhere around there.
Right.
Verlinden and Shep Payne, Francois Verlinden and Shep Payne were two big military model building writers that produced books that were in the hobby shops and on the bookshelves in regular stores for a long time. Shep Payne just passed away a few years ago, but he was kind of one of the early pioneers of web. So that was kind of my first intro, and I look through the lenses of everything's patina. Like when I watch The World, and I'm sure a lot of you, Nico, and you guys go out with your cameras, and every time you walk by a car or a truck or something that's kind of chipped and weathered and dirty, or an old bulldozer next to the street with construction, I'm always looking, and so that's my initial. Even like sitting in an airplane looking out at the wing, I always wanted to sit on the wing because I wanted to watch the little flaps on the wing, and I love the oil streaks on the plane wings and everything when you're sitting in the airport waiting to leave the terminal. And as a kid, that's what I remember.
Don't you get nervous when they put duct tape to repair the wings, and you're like, oh, that's nice.
But that was my first initial foray into it, and then it was just kind of learning how to do what they were doing, and just kind of reading what they were doing and studying what they were, and that's how I kind of learned a lot of that stuff. So yeah, goes
nice.
back a ways.
You know what's funny? What you were saying about looking at weather stuff. This hobby changed my life in that way. That when I walk down the street, and if you see a truck all dirty and all that, you start staring like crazy.
Oh yeah, you look crazy. People think you're nuts.
I was with my girlfriend, and she says, "What are you staring at?" And I was like, "Look at those streaks coming down." So that's how it goes. And she was like, "Oh."
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's
nice. So what guys got you hooked into doing more weather, like continuing weathering your stuff? Yeah, go ahead, Nico. What do you got?
Honestly, because when I finished this, I thought it looked amazing. It looked exactly like the one in the movie. I don't think so that
that's it.
But I did then. So I said like, oh wow. I took 1 billion pictures of it.
Nice.
Of everything. So that actually got me very motivated and then discovering all the model world, like all the techniques or models that exist. It's something that keeps growing to this day. But
it's an abyss of information that basically it's never ending, and it's just you want to see more and more, right? Like
so. How about you, Andrew? Like, you've obviously dove way further in than I have, but like always seeing your work has been really good. Like, what got you hooked into weathering, man?
For me, it's always just trying something I haven't done before. I mean, every build I do, whether it's a miniature or a figure or a Gundam kit, I try and learn a new technique or something, or new colors that I haven't really worked with, or doing something I haven't done. And so it just got to a point where I'm like, well, I haven't done this yet, so let's try weathering. And then it's I haven't tried weathering it this way yet, so I'll try it this way. So I like to experiment and try different things all the time.
Nice, awesome, Mr. Rinaldi. You've obviously done this a lot longer than most of us here, with not just experience, but like, what was like? Do you remember like what it was like? You know what? This is gonna be my thing. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna continue with this.
Yeah, I'd say for me a little bit more when the magazine started calling a lot. They were like, hey, can you, they were sending me kits and can you build them? And that's like when you realize like, oh, I'd better take this seriously. Another part of this too is I've never really, before I started to write about it, like undertook weathering as a thing. Like it was all just part of the model building process to me. It was like, that's the secondary finishing stages of it. So I never really looked at it as, I just always thought of the finished result was what I was after. And so everything I was looking at, which is mostly military type stuff, was they were always like filthy. So you're always, that's kind of like with my end game. So it wasn't like I've got to weather. It was like, no, I just got to get to that level. I have to get it to look like that. And that just includes weathering per se. So it was kind of a separate, I really had to break it down when I had to like explain the processes and, A plus B equals C. That's where it starts to become, okay, this is painting. This is chipping, this is decals, this is weathering, these are varnish. Like to get to that conversation, it's because I turned into kind of this is a professional endeavor, a career endeavor, that conversation now breaks down into like what we're talking about. Whereas really it's just a project. Like I'm just, okay, I got the kit, I've got photos of it, or I've got some sort of imagination what I want it to look like, and then I just got to get all the way over here to get it done. That's just basically it, really. So because sometimes there's some weathering stuff that happens way early on, when you construct it, because you have to damage it or beat it up or whatever it is, because that's part of the weathering story, so to speak, if you will, So, yeah.
Speaking of weathering stories, I want to get, I think, a good segue. We were looking at different types of weathering. You guys have probably seen this. If not, check out Wilson PL.Art's album. This one is a good example of different types of weathering. So we put it all in kind of like a chip format. So just gonna go through all of them. Nothing too crazy. But like if you go here, you could start seeing the different effects of like
Go in
chipping,
full screen.
scratches.
Go in full screen. Just so that,
Is it full screen?
no, on the top
Oh,
right
hang on.
of no, the top right of this of the black screen. There's a full screen mode.
Photo settings.
Oh, that right.
Yeah.
No, that was
Oh, okay. That's boring. Damn.
That was it. Like just another border.
All right.
Yeah. So painting and bridge. I'm not going to go through all of them. I just want to give, I think, our audience just kind of a feel. Like, if you guys check this out, there's a lot of like examples online.
So far, I think personally, I find it like the most condensed reference material you can have. Like, it's a quick reference,
I've never
right?
seen this before. It's nicely presented. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Lacks a lot of information, but I mean, the image represents exactly what it is, right? And you can kind of like deduct how it's been done from certain like
it gives you
ways.
talking points, so everyone can talk about it the same way and know what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Terminology
And
is
I think that
exactly, yeah,
terminology is very important. I'm a big stickler on that one in terms of the hobby terminology. Guys say I weathered it with oils, which is, you know, like my conversation is I have a whole thing about that where it's like that doesn't tell anybody anything, kind of a thing. So it's good. Some of this is pretty specific, so it's nice. It's broken down fairly, you know, simply.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, you guys probably have done most, if not all of these in your style. So a couple of questions for you would be like, when you guys are starting a project, you know, that will be weathered, what are some of your thought process that you guys think about before initiating the work? Let's start with, who do we want to take this? Let's take this on Nico. Let's start with you, man.
If I'm going to do a weather model, the first thing that I consider is what base color I'm going to use. Because I want weathering will result more in certain colors than in others.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to figure out first the scheme, the basic scheme that I'm going to use, so I can when I do the weathering, they will pop the way that I like. So that's why a lot of my builds are monochromatic.
Nice. Okay.
But that's basically what I first think when I'm going to do a weather build. Is the color, base color.
I think that's the hardest decision.
Why is that,
picking the scheme,
Michael?
Picking the scheme to me is the hardest decision of any project. I personally think that's always been the most challenging. Is choosing what is this thing going to like, because a lot of this stuff is there's available schemes for it. So it's picking the scheme for me has always been the most like stressful decision. Like, oh, do I want to do it? Oh, I don't want to do like, oh, you know, and then that whole thing will slow a project down more than anything. Yeah. Once I have what Nico's talking about, where you just like, you've got the decision made, it's all pretty straightforward after that in a lot of cases, but it's just choosing the first up. Oh my gosh, I've done that so many times where I'm like, do I want to do this color? That's just.
But there's I mean, composition is very important, right? So you need to make sure that everything is right, because like one shade of color off, and then the project takes a completely different turn. So,
for example, once sorry,
I was gonna say, Andrew, like, do you have any points on when you start your projects with weather?
Yeah, there's three things for me. First one is environment. So what is the environment that it's fighting in? Is it in mud? Is it in desert? Or is it in space? Because they're going to be completely different ways you have to tackle each one. Next is what type of material is the suit made of? So if it's a suit's made out of titanium, well, why are you using rust on it? And it's in space. There's no rust if it's a titanium suit in space. No alloys. General rule.
Well, they might have like cleaned it with water in space and spat on it or something.
That's the paint. The paint is rusting because it's
paint, well, right? There's oxygen in the hangar when they keep it inside.
Ooh. Yeah, titanium still doesn't rust. But anyways, that doesn't make a difference.
Space rust.
And then the other thing is like Nico said, is color. If I'm going to weather a kit, it's going to be either a bright color or light color. It's not going to be black. It's not going to be navy blue. It's not going to be dark gray. It's not going to be anything like that.
Right on. John, I think we're going to talk about what it's like the sizes of like.
Well, that's it. Well, Nicolas actually mentioned it that actually Michael taught Nicolas how to scale his model, right? Because chipping is not just chipping. I mean, weathering in general is you have to consider scale of it. Certain things are unrealistic, and having the right tool around is very important. Having the right tools around and the scale. So two questions in one, I guess. How do you feel is the best way to approach the scale of your weathering, and what kind of tools are you using to approach this problem, I can say, or this solution?
Who wants to take that by raise of hand?
Ariel wants to take it.
It's such a loaded question.
Ariel,
It is. But I mean, that's the core of everything, right? Making it fit.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, let's go back to Andrew. I think he has something on this one. I could see with his eyes.
Largely, it's not really different tools. It's just how much you're using them. So if I'm using sponge chipping, I'm using it regardless of scale. I'm just getting bigger blotches depending on the scale, or smaller blotches and that. And if I'm doing scratches, then I'm more focused on making them finer on something that's smaller. But ultimately, it's done the same way. It's just don't push as hard with the brush if you want a finer line. So I don't really change how I do it per se, just a little more or a little less pressure with the tools generally.
Right on.
Interesting.
Michael, what's your take on getting the right scale on kits? Like,
I would say,
how do you factor that in?
Yeah, no, I mean, to everybody's comments, they're all relatable and they're all kind of in the same vernacular. I would say if I'm going to judge something, it's going to be the scale. I call it in the book scale realism. It's kind of a coin term, but it's that idea that if it's 1/72 or 1/100 or 1/44, 1/35, 1/40, whatever that scale number is, those chips, scratches, marks, everything has to be in that one scale version percentage of whatever it is you're doing. So a 1-inch scratch is going to be, and how do you do that? And it's kind of like what Andrew's saying is a lot of it is both your human element to what you're doing with the tool. Some cases you have to change brushes or brush sizes sometimes. And then for me, I guess the ultimate is I try to work with techniques that perfect each element to what we're talking about. So for the common one is the hairspray chipping. So there's sponge chipping, salt chipping, hand brushed, micro layered chipping, et cetera, et cetera. And I just, whatever the best technique is to achieve that thing in that scale is where I'll focus my energy. And it's not any sort of loyalty to anything other than that technique is going to give me the best end result. I don't care who makes it, what it's made from, et cetera. That's secondary. So I would say in that regard, that's usually what happens in my thought process of, okay, I want this part of it. And some of it's speed, some of it is, well, I need a quickie. Well, then that eliminates some techniques. Or I've got a lot of time to do this, so then I can enjoy this particular range of techniques because I've got the time to do it. So it just a little bit depends, but ultimately it is kind of that, you adjust yourself to adjust the technique onto the version of what scale you're working in. Because 1/144th is going to be different than 1/100. It's whatever 44% difference is. So it should be the same. If the part's smaller by scale, so is the weathering.
Right on.
I think it's the single most important thing we deal with is scale, personally.
Yeah.
So I think it's the most
absolutely
important. Like if you're trying to achieve realism and win a show or win, scale is your number one priority.
And that will illustrate a good the realism, feel, weight, story.
That's what all comes
built
from.
up around.
You could have 8 million chips on a machine, but if each one of them is in scale, you're gold. So it's kind of the over-weathered comment to me is oftentimes it's overscaled is usually what I'm seeing. It's usually kind of the end result. It's a little bit more of that to me than anything else really. It's refinement. Yeah.
Nico, you've done a lot of mecha modeling in the last while, including Star Wars and all that stuff. We've seen your work and all that stuff. How do you maintain making sure that your scale is as close to either realistic or, at least to a scale value? What are some of the stuff that you keep in mind or watch out for when you're working on your stuff?
Well, scale is like we all have been saying, scale for me is the most important thing. So what I try to do is look at references of big machinery and see how the chipping is on them. Chipping for me is the most stressful thing to figure out when I'm doing a build, because that's in a lot of ways that will determine your scale when you're doing your piece. And but that's my method. Is trying to figure out through looking at all the real life machinery, what kind of scale I can use for a certain build that I'm doing. And after that is with the technique. Like, I'm limited in many ways because I don't airbrush. So, for example, the hairspray technique, which I want to try really bad, I can't because I use lacquer cans.
You gotta read Michael's tutorials about that.
No, I actually saw what the thing that I saw with you. You were doing the hairspray technique. Like, I know all the theory about it, but I just don't have the ways to do it. But so I use a sponge.
If you don't have an airbrush, it is a little bit of it can be a challenge if you don't have an airbrush. I understand for sure.
So there's little rows that I've been taking for it. Like, I still use the sponge for example, depending on the scale. After I use the sponge, I use my knife and I eliminate manually the excess of chipping. So I'm a little OCD, so I hate when the actual sponge effect looks like little circles and like perfect circles, like it's, oh my god, this is a sponge. So I tried to, with a knife and a lot of squinting, give them form. That takes a long time, but it's actually kind of fun as well. And in that way I try to achieve the scale of the chipping.
Nice.
Because that's for me is the most stressful part of everything. After I figure out the chipping, adding the rust and the streaking and all that stuff it's a little easier because now you have like a reference.
That's great.
That's true.
Great.
Yeah.
We've been hearing a lot of about chipping or about abrasion and everything, or methods on how to get it. Do you guys have a favorite style of weathering that you personally prefer? I mean, I know Michael has said that you go with what is needed, right? But is there one that you prefer personally?
Oh, that's a good one.
Like, is there one that you actually enjoy? Like, you get very excited about jumping.
Let's go with Andrew, because like he likes to try new stuff out. Like, you probably have some kind of go-to when you guys when you work.
Yeah. So what I use the most is definitely the sponge chipping, and it's a speed thing. If you're impatient, in my opinion, it's the best results in the least time. Obviously, if you want to spend more time in it, like hairspray and salt and stuff does amazing results. But because I'm also painting like miniatures and stuff, where I'm painting potentially 100 guys, I'm not gonna spend that time. So it just depends on what I'm doing and how much time I have to do it and how patient I am. So predominantly I'm using the sponge, but I've experimented with a little bit with everything with mixed results.
Nice. Aside from hairspray, that's the next question.
Yeah. So I think for me, one thing I like to it's been a conversation trying to get in the hobby and just kind of a more generalized, everybody kind of understand a little bit. I've always actually put chipping in painting. In that, when I break it down, I put chipping into painting versus weathering. I tend to there's a point in the model project for me when I have to delineate between the two. I actually tend to call weathering now basically getting everything dirty in terms of just the literal physical, what it is. Markings, paint, color, all that stuff, the chips, because of the hairspray and what it does, where I'll put a base coat down and then put a hairspray and then another color. That's all in the painting process. So to me, in my head, I oftentimes with chipping in particular and scratches too, the same thing. It's actually, to me, a painting process. And I find it easier to discuss, especially with men. We have a lot of psychological stuff where we like to process things in our own way because we all think we know it all. So I try to discuss things. And I think it's a problem. I'm trying to teach dudes how to do stuff. It's a thing.
Guilty.
But I try because I try to really I think about this stuff like, okay, well, how do I get everybody in a global context? I have to sell this everywhere. So I find that talking chipping and painting sections is a little bit easier for me. So for me to answer the question is actually the oil paint stuff, the oil paint rendering that I do. Is I actually really enjoy it, like for real. It's not a bullshit thing. Like I don't just throw my name around and say, okay, this is great. I came up with that idea because the standard weathering processes up till like 5-6 years ago was about, you put a wash on the whole model, and then you put a filter on the whole model. You do it's one thing on the whole model, and then you wait for that to get done, and then you do it all over again on the next step. And that just drove me nuts. On top of which, I think, like Nico, you've been to the seminar. When you have to demo and seminar like a small section of a model that still takes a couple hours to go from all the stuff through, I found really enjoyable to weather the full section out on a little section of a model versus the whole model. And then, as that project goes months and months or weeks and weeks, you kind of just lose it a little bit. And so what I learned was with the oil paint rendering of doing everything with an oil paints, the little palette of oils here. Here's an oldie.
That's it.
Like, that's it, man. I don't need anything else. I have like tubes of oil, this, and some brushes, and I'm like, all right, dude, like, it's like legit. I enjoy it. I really, really enjoy it.
Do you have a go-to brand now for your oils? Is it still Winsor and Newton, or have you done some stuff?
Yeah, no, these are Winsor Newtons. Most of it's just whatever the hobby brands are pushing right now. I think the AK Interactive, the 502, the brands I used to use, they bought out, kind of a thing. So, this one, I literally think I bought these like 03, 04. Like, they're still, it's still, like, I barely used any of it. So it's a very efficient process, which I appreciate. Saves your wallet.
You know what? Something that I learned from you on that seminar, that is something that I do now with my builds, is that you mentioned that you will take a piece and you will do everything to that piece, like all the weathering, and then you will start all over again.
Whatever it is.
Yeah. I have found that helps so much with not burning out when you're building.
Yes.
Because, for example, the way I used to do it,
mental, dude. Totally. No, it's exactly why I did that. Yeah.
Because when I was building before, I will do the wash first. So I remember doing the wash on the legs, on a leg, and then I go like, okay, now I have to do the same thing on the other leg. Doing it again, and then
you're like, whoa. Yeah.
So
I think,
Nico,
everything to one.
I think a lot of weathering things is guys get tired of it. Like Andrew's talking about, like, I need to be fast with chipping. I think a lot of weathering is, dude, just like it's just like, that's a lot of work. It's like doing the dishes or mowing the lawn. I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna take forever.
Unless you enjoy it thoroughly.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is.
Or building the guns.
Yeah, it's whatever it is that irks you. Like, for me, it was always tracks and road wheels on tanks. There's 50 of them. You're like, oh, but it's got to be like the funnels, on a new Gundam. Like, I look at that and I go, oh yeah, I'll get you.
Never building you.
I'm not doing you anytime soon. But if I did one funnel a night all the way through, I'm excited, because when I wake up the next day and I see what I've done the night before, that motivation comes in from that mental act, especially in COVID era where we're really stuck. Like, this is it for me, fellas. You're looking at it right here. I don't go anywhere. I mean, my other desk is right here, and I'm in these two seats. So
hey, man, if you ever want to talk to anyone, call Jonathan. He'll listen to you. No freaking problem. Right? Yeah. Exactly.
Anytime. Yeah.
But that's half of this to me. A lot of it is the mental aspect of what we do, and getting guys to be enthusiastic about finishing a project.
And the thing is, it's a hobby, right? It's a hobby. You're supposed to enjoy it, and when you leave in the morning for work, well, not anymore, I guess, but when you come back from work and you're on your way home and you're like, okay, now it's hobby time, and you're dreading it, and you're like, oh, I got so much work to do, and I'm like, I don't like that. But if you just look at it and you're like, oh, it's just one piece, I'll do that, and step by step, and it's actually a project management theory where, like, you break down your things, all your project. Was it again like the I forgot, but whatever. So you break it down in multiple parts.
It very much is project management.
Yeah.
And
something funny with that has happened to me as well, is that as soon as I finish the piece and I'm gonna start the other one, it's like, how was it that I did this? Because I want to chip something. I was, how did I get this effect again?
Especially as you get older, Nico, and you forget. Age is catching up.
No, because there's times that I achieve something by a mistake. And something,
I hate that.
Or you run out of material. Or don't you just hate that? You run out of that cobalt blue or whatever you're working with. Nico, to tie it off, like your go-to for when you're doing your projects, either before your current projects, like what are some of your I guess favorite style or technique that you apply to yours?
Well, it's not a favorite technique. It's my favorite part of the weathering process is when I add the streaks or the rust. I enjoy, because that's for me what is telling the story. that I'm doing. Rust will tell you how long this machine has been in service, or if it has been through a lot. So when I'm doing that part, either doing the streaking, doing the rust smashes, or using the Tamiya weathering kit for pigments, that's what I like the most. So when I do the basic wash on everything, I'm like, okay, this is done. Now we move to the fun part.
Right on.
Nice.
Okay, John, what else do we got here on deck for them?
I mean, it's a good segue. We're going to talk about rust, right? It is a type of weathering, but do you think we can break down the types of weathering? I think we did ish, and that was like, I think we did that yesterday, right? So there's space for corrections. And types of weathering, we rust, environmental, aging, and battle damage. I think that defines well the types of weathering. Is there like something we're missing? And maybe we can go in defining it, right? Rust is like the aging process. You would define it pretty well.
So Andrew just like asked to share his screen. Is this part of the thing, Andrew?
Yeah, well, this is just what you guys were talking about. I came across this a couple of weeks ago, and this is something that I saw in a miniature painting group, just about sort of the stages of process and about how that's
Jesus.
and I saw this, and I'm like, this.
Somebody graphed it out.
What
Yeah,
do
so
we
it's
got?
really
Can you zoom into that? Like,
Can you put it full screen?
It's not super high resolution, but there you go.
it's not on the screen right now, Andrew. I think you
No?
selected a different window.
No, it says it's sharing it. That says it's sharing it. I don't have other windows.
No, we see it. It's just a thumbnail now. And
Really? Well,
If you look at
I'm
our
not sure.
Okay, let's try that again.
maybe it froze or
If you could share that
it
again.
looks-
Okay. John, just going back to your question, what were your
basically
basically
like I think I was trying to define like the categories, right? And rust, environmental, aging, and battle damage, and all of them have environmental can go like rust can probably go in environmental, but there's different techniques and what is it again? Storytelling into all this, right? Battle damage creates the external thing, environmental more like the aging process and everything, and there's also and going into weathering techniques from there that derives from all the stuff we're trying to achieve. Chipping, washes, and dusting, I can say. With this, we're able to get the most effect of it, right? And I think in terms of chipping, like we were taking, it creates like a small chipping, right? It's basically like the usage of the paint, the usage of the machine, and everything like that. Battle damage is something that we can create manually or otherwise. Like there's many different types that we can do. Like a lot of people use Dremel and stuff like that. And then aging is like rusting and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good question to add to that would be like, how do you achieve certain effects? I know you guys have like really good strengths in various categories of like the weathering. I guess my question, I think I'll probably ask one type of effect and kind of get your like thought, the process of like how you achieve it. So for example, let's try rusting. And I'll ask Nico, when you're approaching rust and how to achieve rust colors on your builds, like what are some of the materials you would recommend using or you have used yourself?
Well, you have to consider what kind of rust I do. I like when I do something, I like it to be like extremely used. So it's not like a tiny bit of rust. Obviously, I try to keep it in scale, but it's something that it's been done a lot extra. So, for terms of what I use this stuff from Wigg. So I use
the powder ones.
No, these are the oil ones.
Okay.
And I use the rust, everything that says rust on the label, and I just try them on. In terms of when I to tangle the rust. So depending on also what I'm trying to do, because rust also streaks. So if it's gonna streak, I use the wash. There's also rust wash.
Nice.
I don't have it here right now, so I don't know, but I use that.
And what kind of tool are you
Awesome.
using to?
Just pencil. Oh, I
Pencil.
use for the streaking I use pencil but I use mostly a lot of this.
Oh, yeah.
What's that? Q-tips? Cotton
Yeah.
swabs? Oh wow.
I
Okay.
use billions of this.
Billions and billions.
Like, let me just show you one. Let me just share the screen a little bit. Will you show you something?
Sure.
Sure, absolutely.
1 second. There you go.
So this one is the last one. This is the last build that I did. And all this smush that you see here is basically what I did with the watch and cotton swabs. So to do this model, I used not lying 100 cotton swabs.
Oh, Jesus.
Jeez. Wow, that's a lot.
But
Awesome.
So these little effects that you see here, like the different color gradients and everything, that's all done with a wash. It's called engine wash, engine grime, and a cotton swab.
Oh wow.
This other stuff is just with the sponge. But yeah, that's basically
Nice.
it became
Amazing.
one of my most used tools. That even my GWC one, I used a lot of cotton swabs in that too. So
See that? It's not just for your ear, guys. Michael, question for you would be aging. Totally not related to your age, but like aging.
That's what the chin shows. Is like my rings of the tree, right?
People probably there's many ways to do aging, as in like either been out in the sun environments and all that stuff. If you were to try to do an aging on a machine or like some kind of armor, what are some of the factors or like materials you would consider using when trying to achieve such effect?
Yeah, no, I think Andrew and John both talked about it. Environmental effects on something, especially if the machine itself, in this case, some of the Gundams have been around a long time, decades or centuries, depending on the story arcs and the cannons that they're coming from.
Right.
Whereas sometimes in the World War II military stuff, they've been in the field for a week or two and they're destroyed. So it kind of depends a little bit, but realistically speaking, that is, and it doesn't matter if it's Planet X or Earth. The laws of physics in the universe kind of all apply the same. There's gravity, there's sun exposure, there's wind, there's rain, there's snow,
Oxygen.
it's that part of it is going to be something that, as the author, you have the ability to incorporate into a machine. So, if you're coming from an arid climate and you want, you can show it in the snow, but it's, coming from, the desert, you've got a lot of realm of possibilities between what Mother Nature can do in terms of, both either sun exposure to fade to paint, or the opposite, where maybe it's in the South American continent and moisture is constant and it's just heavy rust, or it's on a water-based scenario where there's, some of the Xeon suits were water-based. So those are going to look totally different than a Dom Tropin that's coming out of North Africa, So you have to be honest and have integrity of your project line to kind of put that into it. But it will dictate. It's not. I don't want to say it's rocket science because we're dealing with rockets and machines, but it's not rocket science. It's just basic. Take that stuff, arid, dry climate versus humid versus, rocky, mountainous. Like Barbatos would look very specific because of the first part of that 25 episodes are on basically that dirt patch that Tekken fought in, right? Like it's going to look like a certain way in reality if you were to really try to take that on. But it's also a century or however old the Calamity Wars was. Like that thing is ancient in terms of the arc of the story and how long it's been around. And
300 years or something.
Whatever it was, there's some other things too. So this probably gets a little, but you guys are into this too, so I think you'd understand this. I was having like a talk with myself because it's COVID and there's nobody here, but like the seed mobile suits, the Gundams, they molecularly change color, correct?
Yeah.
Like, so they're not going to chip because they're not painted. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, their color is activated.
It's like a transformer. Like Optimus Prime can change his color. So when Hasbro sells us a chipped Optimus Prime, I'm like, wait a minute, dude. He can like molecularly change his skin, so he's not pink. So there's those
Yeah.
elements. I think that's a little bit offbeat, but realistically, if you're going to play that card, you have to be really honest with the process, what you're really trying to show, whether it's a fantasy arc, canon in the anime, in the manga, whatever that is. It can also participate in the finish of, because I don't think the seed suits should be chipped in the way, you know, something else would be that was actually like a Barbatos that was painted and overpainted and repainted and rebuilt and repainted and rebaked and so I think there's variables that you can play with as an author in this Gundam world realistically. So
Nice. No, that's a really good point. Yeah,
really
very
well
good
said.
point.
Yeah. Amazing.
Okay, awesome.
But,
Let's go on, Nico.
by the way, talking about the Transformers, why when Optimus Prime transforms into the truck is like brand new, like out of the assembly line, but when he comes back to the robot form, it's all chipped and scratched.
Well,
I think that's not being honest to what he is in the films. I think it's a Michael Bay, like it looks cool or dirty. And
it's because they're promoting that freaking the breath.
He's like he can manipulate his finish. Like, what are you doing here? I don't know.
Why is he coming back all dirty and destroyed?
It depends on what version. Because that's not always true. It depends on what version of them you're looking at. But anyways.
Right.
Andrew, I know you've been working with some of the AK pencils the last while to achieve certain effects. Like, what type of effects can you now would recommend these pencils to, and like what kind of like I guess weathering we would recommend them to?
Well, basically, what are these oil pencils, right? What does it feel like?
So.
Like Go ahead.
So a couple of years ago, I guess two-ish years ago, AK basically decided that they'd make a modeling-specific watercolor pencil. Watercolor pencils are not new. You can buy them in art supply stores. You've been able to for a long, long time. They're water-soluble pencil crayon. What AK did was they had a slight oil component to help it grip better on painted surfaces as opposed to paper. But they still work the same way, and you can use a bunch of different ways. As for effects, they're awesome for doing like rust effects. And streaking effects. I've used them successfully to do panel lining. I've used them as a filter as well, because ultimately it's like using a paint that's super thin, a watercolor paint that you can always reanimate and fiddle around with. So they're fairly flexible. They're just an alternative using an oil or an enamel wash or paint.
Actually, Andrew, before you continue, I just want to show people, I guess, like this is what we were just talking about. This is like one of the weathering pencils by AK.
So they're not completely oil, right? Because if let's say in actually like the drawing world, normal pencils have different grades, right? So normal is, I think it's HB or something. But then if you go into like the 6B, it becomes the concentration of oil to carbon is different, right?
But
go on.
That only applies to graphite pencils. That doesn't apply to
exactly.
To color
okay, so it's different, right? I thought they were using the same style, but in different color and more like
it's a pencil crayon. It's a pencil crayon that is water soluble. That is what it is.
Interesting. And
go on.
So
the thing that's nice about them is that they clean up and they streak with water as opposed to an enamel, like an odorless enamel thinner. That's what's really nice about them.
Solvents.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're also precise. I think one of the key before Nico starts is they're very precise. You have fine control with a pencil, and I think that's the key element to them. Really.
More maneuverable, especially if you've already like an artist that
comparative to a brush tip that you can sharpen a pencil tip quite sharp and do some really refined stuff, which is good.
Yeah,
guys like that.
Yeah, I started using them, especially the rust. I have the chipping set and the rust set. I have a build that I'm doing right now that I'm actually using. I'm learning how to use them because they do need a certain learning curve to it if you are not used to them. If you can share my screen just a little bit.
Sure, 1 second.
Like this build right now that I'm doing, I'm using those.
Nice. And Ron just added us to his rating party to us. We added 4 more people on the chat, so welcome guys to the show.
Cool.
And Simon Lamb is saying hi.
One thing that I really like about this is that if you made a mistake, it's easy to erase because they're word-based, so you can just... But once they dry, and they are like strong. So I've been using that for
Sort
these
of.
builds here. Well, yeah.
I know from experience that if you have even like a tiny bit of sweat on your fingers and you touch it,
yeah,
it reanimates it. So they are not permanent.
Yeah. That's
Ask me how I know after painting a white suit.
Oh god.
No, that happened to me. Unless you add water or some sort of water to them, they're very strong. But water will totally.
What was your hands
Erase
sweaty? To a level where we would reactivate paint? Jeez.
No, just like natural.
Andrew does tabletop
natural
paint, right?
oils.
I mean,
yeah,
he touches them a lot more than some of the other models.
Yeah, so
the tabletop world is a little bit different because of the handling, right? I mean, you guys handle it quite a bit.
Yeah.
But is it because of volume too? Like, because you don't like in a miniature, like the surface is not as much as like say Nico's build, which is a master grade, and you have like more surfaces covered that it solidifies more, or does it matter for volume?
No, it's the same as a watercolor paint. Watercolor paint, you can go back years later and reanimate it with a little bit of moisture. It never, it dries. It doesn't cure. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Watercolors don't cure
unless you top coated it though. If you top coat,
right?
Yeah, that's a solution to secure your work, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah,
Right.
I've been finding them very, very, very awesome to use. So like in this thing that I'm doing, I like the results. It's long, takes longer because it's more detailed for me or for what I'm doing. But that's why I've been working on this for like a year now.
Interesting. Awesome. Thank you. Next question. I think we could ask everybody what is in all the experience, what is your most memorable moment? Something challenging, something that you had to overcome? You know, like the classic interview question of you know.
I want to hear from Michael first. I'm sure this guy has some really good story. Let's hit it.
That's how you learn, right?
Memorable or challenging or something that was threw you a curveball. I think that's a curveball question.
Something that threw me a curveball was I did enter a model one time in competition, and I thought I was going into a certain category with it, and the judges said, no, this is another category, and which was like mostly a scratch build category ultimately, and it's judged completely differently. And I was with another fellow who did the same thing, and we kind of just like went, oh, okay. And I'd taken 2 kits and kit bashed something to create a different vehicle that I saw a photo of that they'd done in real life that way too, where they'd taken a gun and put it on a tank chassis and threw it in the field. I'm like, oh, this is really cool, but they no, that's scratch build over here, and I'm like, oh, that sucks, because I wanted to be judged over here with the painting and weathering, and I'm not a big scratch builder guy. Like I can, but it's not what I was for. So that threw me for a loop. I learned that lesson. Knowing what category you're going into in a model show is a big deal. Maybe not so much for Gundam,
Right.
in the military.
Yeah. Well, IPMS has been
Right, Ariel?
Hey, no, we're not. You stay away from my lane, man. You take your sci-fi out of my movie sci-fi. It's two different things.
That one was and that was after traveling halfway around the world, all excited to, hang out with the fellas, and you're scratch built, you're over here. I'm like, oh,
nice.
There was like 3 models in that category. So like,
that's it. When you learn, you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna be first in that category, and you learn, oh shit, I'm gonna be like 6 in that one.
I got it wrong. They judged us on, the rating system was predetermined, so you can only reach a gold standard by fitting the number. Like you had to the points.
Oh, I love this stand. Yeah, this one is good. It's more accurate, not more.
I think so.
It's more fair.
It takes a human element. Yeah, it takes a human element.
Yeah, so they can be 3 gold if you're a gold standard.
Yeah,
in the same
if
category.
You hit the standards. It's a standard show, which is I do appreciate. I do like that.
Yeah.
So.
Nice. Just a segue follow up on that one. How about a project? Could you recall of a project, like an actual build that threw you a curveball, and what you did about it?
It threw me a curveball. No, I'm usually a good planner, Ariel.
Well then, all right, he's out. Get him out of here.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'd say it's not so much a curveball as I had to react quickly. And it was another similar type of a dual vehicle that had been taken half of this and put it together. And we just got the photos on the internet, and it was this old World War II photo album that got previewed on eBay or something. Somebody was selling it, and then somebody grabbed the photos and threw it on our forum. And I remember going, oh shit, if I don't build this now, somebody else is going to build this. And it was like only one of them. and I had to stop and drop everything. So there was that moment where it was like I had to scramble. And it's in my Tank Art 1 book. It was a flat gun on a Panzer IV chassis that they'd found, and I even got some other big dudes that like wrote me later saying you beat me to the punch, because we're big in that world where when you build a model first, you're like the first guy to build that one, and everyone's like, oh,
yeah,
man.
And everybody else like, oh, it's my idea. No, it's my idea.
I had to scramble hard because and I had to photograph it, and I'm like, here's the photos of my build on this date. I'm like, here you
Rule
go.
34, guys. Right, Internet rule 34.
Flexing, baby.
Yeah.
That was one. That was probably the most.
Maybe 2 years ago, it happened to me. I was starting my world level championship, the GBWC, and I was starting it. The plan was all there on paper, literally, one of the best builder in the world released it. Released, oh, this is my build, and now like they literally made a kit of it, and I was like, well, that was my project entirely, and it's like, wow, okay, well,
yeah, no, it was my project
that.
Too, John.
Yeah, that's
definitely
mine too, buddy. By the way, just
Andrew, same question. Like, obviously, you've done a lot of competitions, a lot of projects. Could you recall like any a particular time or a specific project that really gave you like the run for your money?
Anyone that's required modifying the kit in some way, because there's always with kit bashes that involve sawing, like when you're sculpting new parts and trying to join things, they never fit together the way you think they're going to the first try, and sometimes it takes a lot of work just trying to get the parts to fit together. That happened with my Taurus. Just trying to get the backpack on it, I think took me like 3 weeks to figure out a way to just attach the backpack onto the suit in a way that I like to look. So that's the biggest holdup for me, and the biggest thing that comes up. That and breaking parts, that happens too.
Oh yeah.
How about in regards to achieving like paints or finishes on a project?
With that, definitely I've screwed up the hairspray technique more times than I've been successful with it.
Don't let Michael know.
No, I have far too often chipped right back down to the plastic and then had to go back with a brush and repaint in the base colors with a brush. I'm like, well, that's not how that's supposed to go. And I've learned a little bit since then. Like my understanding now is like if you put several gloss coats in there as like a mid coat partway through the process, that helps a lot with the chipping. But that or letting it sit too long and letting everything cure for too long and then trying to do it, and you're like, oh shit. That does not come off anymore. So yeah, I've made a lot of mistakes trying hairspray. I don't know if I've ever done it right, 100% right.
It's got a lot of variables attached to the technique for sure. There's a ton of variables.
Yeah.
When is your next tutorial session, Michael? Maybe we should all sign up for one of those seminars.
I'm hoping to actually get the videos pretty soon, to be honest with you guys.
Nice. Nice. Guys, check it out. Rinaldi Studio. Yeah, but you've been uploading it on rinaldistudio.com, right? Or have you?
There's no videos. There's no digital. I mean, I have a YouTube channel, but I don't.
YouTube channel. Okay.
Yeah, there's no use to it. I've got subscribers. I'm like, there's like 50 dudes. I'm like, what are you waiting for? I mean, this album.
Hey, I'm gonna send some your way then. Hopefully, I'll get that up.
I don't. Yeah, I think all the ones I've done are for other people. So you could search my name and it'll pop up those videos. So there's
Yeah, it's all like Hornet Hobby had a couple of videos. There's a couple of IPMS videos. Yeah, there's like every time I search for you, I was actually looking for your YouTube so I could link it, and it gives me like everybody else's.
I have one, but I've never used it. Yeah. So.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get more from you on the future. Nico. Yeah, Nico. What would you say some of like I guess a challenge for you that you've obviously faced and eventually overcome?
Yeah, there is 2 projects that I did. I can show them to you. I have pictures of them.
I like that he's showing pictures, guys. You guys have pictures too, right?
I do.
He came ready.
I throw this picture up. I apologize.
Well, we'll circle back with Michael on that one, but like, and Andrew, because like I know they got a couple of theirs on deck. All right, Nico, what's this, man?
For example, this one, it's my second diorama, and one of my first kit bashes, you could say. But the big challenge for me on this one was, again, the chipping. Doing the chipping to scale, because this is a 144, so this thing is tiny. So doing that and the mud trying because I wanted to show that this machine is heavy, so it's actually sinking in the mud. So trying to achieve that in scale, I think I did a good job. But
Can you zoom into that
Yeah,
area
that's
where
always-
the feet is like sinking? Because like we could
Yeah.
probably get a look at that.
yeah,
Nice.
so also this guy doing tracks because this is supposed to be like an aerial kind of thing that goes. So you cannot see it very
Hover,
well in the
yeah.
picture, but I did it. Yeah, accents. So this was a big challenge for this and making everything around it into scale. So and the other one is obviously this.
Oh,
This had a whole bunch of this had a billion challenges that I had to go and overcome while I was building it. Scale, weathering. This is the first time I went out really crazy adding parts and details.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that say winning
Uh.
GBWC is like aiming for your like 250% and like
go
just-
another
just-
100.
and yeah, that's it. Just winging it. You know, you just wing it, and then you try to fix your mistakes and make it work. Yeah.
Oh, this had a
Competition
lot of
modeling is
mistakes.
the
Like
thing,
this
though.
is
Competition modeling is a different level of model building too.
Yeah.
It does
Yeah.
bring its own thing to the table, if you will.
I'm
Like,
gonna
there's
have
a lot
a
of
question
errors
about that
happening
after.
like challenges that I did is that I had to replace a lot of parts that when I did them the first time, either I destroyed or I didn't like how they came. So, like for example, this is the second head that I did. Same with the body. The body has, I think, a leg is from another one. So there were challenges. So that's what I mean in terms of like you're saying things that you have to overcome. For me, that stick out is these two projects. Like I said, I've been doing this for 5 years and actual weathering stuff like this.
Oh.
So it's not like I have a whole bunch of projects. So these two stick out the most.
Sorry, that technical malfunction. I was trying to bring it back
Right.
to
That
here.
was intentional.
That was me. Yeah, I think he's talking too much. Let's get him out of here. Michael, you mentioned
What a dig.
I'm consistent. That's it, buddy. Michael, you said you had a couple of photos for like some show and tell. Why don't we go to that next, guys? If you guys have some show and tells, I know Andrew has a couple of images on deck as well. If we get those prepped and we get that,
Yeah,
so
go
I'll be
full screen on
sharing.
me. That should be the. Does that show the legs?
Yeah, I see the
Yeah.
legs. 1 second.
Oh
It
yeah.
is.
Oh, I got that. That's the leg I held.
Yeah, this kind of goes to the overall, like what we've been talking about in general, and kind of also into techniques, also into all the various scales of, because these are the 1/44th scale Dom Tropin legs that I did as kind of a test type. And
Right.
the one leg on the right of the screen is just in a painted state. So when I talked about beforehand, I guess, to kind of loop the whole combo back together, that shows a painting stage for me where it's chipped, the markings are on it, all the colors are on it. And then on the other leg that's fully finished that's all the weathering and what the weathering does to it, and the variety of all the different stuff. And this is just a pure oil paint with the oil paint rendering stuff that I talk about in terms of, you know, applying the stuff into scale and doing that kind of stuff. So that's one, like when I talk about doing that leg alone, to the conversation of the mental enjoyment of it. It was just super fun just to do the leg and then kind of put it aside, knowing that when I get to the other leg, I got this leg to kind of look at as a guide of what I did
exactly,
before.
right? As a reference,
Yeah.
you can
Months
actually.
later, especially with life involved, it's a big deal. So, and it was very, you know, just doing like the joint around the knee, just like a couple hours, just working on that, just with the oils, just having a good time. And you can even, like Andrew, throw in the pencils, do some, like, it's really enjoyable because you're in control and the results are as you kind of hoped it would be, which is kind of half the battle. It's like when it comes out the right way, you're like, this is pretty cool. So, and then kind of to this photo here, I'll switch photos for you guys. This one here, this is kind of the actual physical process on the Sosby leg that I did in, you know, later on. But this is, you can kind of see we're just using the brushes and stuff like that. It's the same basic principle. All the colors were done and then it's going in with the oils. But you can see the chip paint that hasn't been touched yet, that I haven't got to yet. So,
do you have a like a philosophical aspect to it where when you know it's enough?
You know, I got asked that in another interview the other day. Is, you
Oh,
know,
really?
when you know, yeah, that's a big. When you know, I don't know. You never know. Part of it's a deadline. I got to stop. Part of it is, okay, so the final, or not, I don't want to say the final, it's actually the first element for me. It's photo reference. And this, we haven't really touched on it too much in this conversation. And even though we deal with a lot of fantasy type subject in the general context of it's mecha, it's Gundam and everything else, even Star Wars, everything I start with, I find a reference in some way, shape, or form. So if I'm looking at a joint that's an oiled, lubricated joint with hydraulics and there's oil in it, then I'm probably looking at construction equipment, you know, like an excavator arm where the joint is, where you've got the thing and then you've got the whole thing. And what does that look like? So I got to go find that. And that's, for me, to answer your question, when do you know it's enough, is you kind of have to balance it with your references. And you kind of have to go back and say, okay, well, that's the ballpark of what it really kind of looks like. And so then you move it to in your miniature. Okay, well, I've done this, and how does that look? You know, you kind of compare it to your photos, and you're kind of, okay, well, and again, to some of its experience, I'm not going to lie. I mean, you have to be Tom Brady. You have to be out there and throw the ball 10,000 times to know where the ball is going to go. It's the sports analogy is huge for me in terms of when you know it's enough. It's when when you put the mark on the model, and it kind of comes out the right way the first time. Then you probably, okay, that's enough. Let's move to the next spot, and kind of, because a lot of guys just keep doing it, and like, no, dude, you already got it the first time, like, you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, stop, dude, it's dead already.
I have had to force myself to stop many
times. I try not to weather
times.
to other people either, by the way. Like, I like to look at other guys' models all the time, but I try not to weather to what they do, because it's a big trap. Because you don't know what they've done, you don't know what they've looked at, you don't know their parameters. And it's a big mistake a lot of early modelers make, is like they'll try to replicate other modelers' work, and like, dude, that's so hard to do, unless they're giving you, an full breakdown. But if you're just looking at Instagram photos, it's a tough. You got to be real careful with that. I think as a model, young one, Padawan.
Right on.
Oh, by the way, that first leg picture that you show, you have no idea how long have I stared at that leg.
I printed it in the book, like, bigger than the actual too. So I do try to show you some close-ups.
I think you brought a leg. I don't know if it was that exact one.
Yeah, it was. I
did. Yep.
It's
so
funny.
I had it in my. I had it in
that
my.
leg's
hand.
been around the world a few times.
Yeah,
fellas.
that's
the leg, the back skirt armor too. I finished the back skirt armor half of it at home.
One thing that I remember is that. Is that the decal that you do is you painted it? It's not a.
They were
decal.
spray matte. Yeah, I used spray matte. Yeah. That's another conversation to have with that whole thing with spray markings. Yeah, I painted as much.
Yeah, I remember. I had it in my hand.
Yeah, no, that's it. I find it super funny that personally, I wouldn't let anyone touch my model while it's still in work, right? Or even touch. But when you pass it on, I'm like, oh my god, I'm touching it. I'm touching it. I'm like, it's right in front of me.
Dude, don't make me pick up somebody else's model. I hate it. I absolutely hate that. the level of responsibility in your hand is like picking up someone's child. Like, no, I don't care.
When they have to move it or relocate it to a different category.
You know what? When we were in Montreal, and I brought the model there for the GWC, and I put it together in a table, and while I was waiting for the spot that they were gonna give me in the shelf, I remember that this is taking this model, putting it apart, and then putting it back together inside the glass case. In that little trip to the case, I was like, this is gonna be when it's gonna fall and it's gonna break. That was like the last test. I was like, because even if it was my model, when I'm holding it, I'm like holding it with like sick hands. So it's like, it's gonna slip because
No, you get so stressed also in competition, like in high level. Yeah.
Andrew, do you have any some show and tells? I know you mentioned some images earlier on that you wanted to touch base with.
Yeah, I can show a little bit here. Let me just share this window here.
Yeah.
That might be working here.
Got it.
There we go. All right. 1 second. Let's take a look at a few of these.
Jesus Christ! How wide is your computer?
Not wide enough. Not nearly wide enough.
Wide enough. Wide enough for you, big guy.
There we go.
That's what she said.
Yeah. All right. So just take a look here at just sort of cross pollination, I guess, of weathering. Now I can use the exact same things. Like I got this idea, like how I started weathering some of my Warhammer stuff from military models. And it's a lot about it. It's just adding that level of grime to it. And what I've really started doing recently is really adding randomness to it, and with splattering and stuff like that, which I really like. And adding with the chipping, adding right through. Like I'm not trying to add rust in these cases. I'm just trying to sort of chip down to primer and then through it with metallics. But again, you can see a lot of the splattering and the randomness that I really like to add in there now, to get sort of like water highlights and stuff like that. And then I've carried
some
that.
of the materials you've been using on this is all like acrylic, water-based?
So the base paint is all acrylic water-based, but the splashes are all the different, the MIG and AK splash enamels and stuff like that, which is nice because if you need to clean it up because you got a little bit too much in one spot, you can go back and you kind of erase it with the enamel thinner, which is pretty handy, especially when you're doing it randomly, because you don't have control. Like I don't want to get like the little windows, for example. I don't want to cover completely. Right, so being able to go back and fix that, like right here is like right here, and go back and clear that off afterwards, even if realistically they would get covered, for the interest of style and that I sort of compromise a little bit between getting the visual I want and getting the realism I want.
You know, in military, when they have like a very muddy, not a tank, but like a truck, and then the wiper just wipes it off, and they make it part of the story. I think that's just that's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah. Right? You can do it with the dust as well. You just do it with a mask. But so I've used the same technique here with the Gundam, but the difference is the scale, which is what we talked about before. So when I'm doing it with the little tank there, I'm not really worried about scale because relatively speaking, it's a big enough scale that I can go to town on it, and it's a small enough vehicle that it's going to get dirty everywhere, especially based on the environment that it's supposed to be in. But a Gundam standing at 20 some odd feet tall, or that is, it's not going to get weathered the same way that a tank will, or any kind of an APC or anything. So the weathering on a mobile suit, it's all sort of focusing on the lower parts and then working up, which is why the shield, for example, here, methods as I did on the other one, focusing everything on the lower parts here. So the shield, there's a lot more weathering at the bottom and a lot more splashing at the bottom than there is at the top. And so the top, there's a little bit of mark and clean and that here, but the head is relatively clean. And then as we work our way down it to the feet, we start getting a lot more dirt and grime and stuff happening here, and a lot more scratches and that. And you'll notice that when you look at other people's stuff too, that mobile suits, the most fun part is the lower leg and the feet, which is probably why Michael showed us the feet there as well. And that's why he had so much fun on that part there, because on a mobile suit, because of the scale and how big they are and how much they stand off the ground, it's only the lower parts really get all of the exposure. So
right on.
So yeah, lots of fun doing lower legs and that.
Awesome.
Yeah, there was a big transition for me as a model builder from subject matter that's kind of basically a rectangle, which is a tank on a ground, to a bipedal, type form. And how do you weather a bipedal walking machine versus a track tank? And that what he's talking about is exactly part of, you've got to be, if you don't pay attention to this stuff. That's why sometimes when things, especially, and I hate calling this out, but like when you see the top-down weathering on a mobile suit, a lot of it is a little bit, that's, what happened to it? Because is it going face first into the fight half the time? So you have to be cognizant of what the machine really does and how it operates in its environment. It's all tied in. Everything we're talking about there's no one thing. It's all blended together. For sure.
It's about stories. Michael, do you have any? You mentioned might have some images to share. Do you want to go through some of those?
So this would be full screen again, my friend. So rusting. Go back to rusting real quick. I had to remember which one I did like a lot of rust on. And this is actually the D9 dozer.
Right.
The military uses this is the Caterpillar tractor that the military actually uses, and the Life Color paint set on the left that is well worn out on the label. Life Color, if you don't know who they are, they might be new to some of you guys. They're an Italian brand.
Yeah.
It's all water-based paints. They're very much like Vallejo, and they're very much in the same realm of Vallejo and AK and ammo in the water-based sections of stuff. But this comes from their diorama series, and if you don't have this set, it's the Dust and Rust set, or Rust and it's one of Rust and Dust or Dust, or I forget which one it is, but it's the same set. It's I forget whichever the name is. But these 4 colors: yellow, mid orange, and then a dark rust, and then like a dark brown rust. I used an old toothbrush and some sponges. It's pretty basic, and it's all the speckling, the splattering of the rust things onto that. And then after that, I put hairspray on top of that and painted it yellow. So
Nice.
But speaking of, let's see. So this would be the back of the Sazabi. Putting that up, it's very little in my world. That's very little weathering for me. So it's because it's the back, upper end, shoulder of the guys, of a suit. It doesn't get a lot of wear and tear. So that plays to the whole conversation.
Can I ask something about light weathering? Because we did write down, and this is gonna be for all you guys about light weathering. What are your thoughts on that? Is there such thing as light weathering, or do you either go all in or?
Of course there is.
Yeah, absolutely. I get this request a lot. Like, hey, can you do kind of a factory fresh vehicle? A tank that's like just rolled out a little bit. Yeah, it's not my flavor, so I don't. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I don't have a photo of kind of light weathering per se, but I'm trying to think of a project. But realistically, yeah, I mean, you're trying to, what you're trying to. Okay, back myself up here. It's all storytelling. So light weathering is going to be a point in time where the vehicle's clean, the subject's clean at some point in time, and now it's been a short progression through use. Whether that's just training, whether that's just sitting in a hangar, whether that's, if it's been stored in some facility. So light weathering is going to relate to the point of kind of in the story arc of what it hasn't seen combat yet, per se. Or it's just,
right.
Treat it in the greater arc of what's going on. It's a new vehicle. It's just literally a week old, that whole conversation. So yeah, definitely. It just hasn't lived very long. It hasn't been around. It hasn't done anything. It's a newbie, it's a noob on the battlefield. So it's not going to have that many. And so what you do, how you physically attack that is just, you just do 10% of what you probably normally do, or 20%, just, keep it super. If I do chipping all over the foot on the base of something, then just pick a few corners that would likely get hit or bumped into and keep it to that. It restraints hard, Ariel, to be truthful. Subtlety, restraint, pulling back.
I was gonna ask something because I got something on deck here. Maybe I could show you guys and let me know some feedbacks on it. So a project I did not that long ago. This is around October, and these are some of the weathering that I did to it. I don't know if you guys could see it, but like right here, just a little bit of like fade and a little bit of like usage of like silver enamels, just to give it that extra thing. Like obviously this is not weather because it's in space, so it's seen mainly like bents.
It's not
and
dirty.
gashes,
There's no dirt in
right?
space. Yeah, absolutely.
There's no, yeah, exactly. So like these are the stuff, but like I've always for me, I've had a hard time trying to get that perfect either like look to it, especially with the lance. I do find that like working with corners was really fairly straightforward to go and just kind of like make sure that the brush pattern is kind of like going the same way as if something was gonna hit it. Now, for those of guys, I guess to like get that effect, do you guys have any type of recommendation or method that? Oops, is that me? There we go. That you guys could probably like touch base upon. Let's see who wants to do. Anyone with light weathering? Andrew.
Well, I've got an image on deck. It's not mine, but it's a good example of what I would consider to be fairly light weathering here. Like there's a bit of chipping done, but there's not like a lot of buildup of grime or anything, and there's just some light tonal variances in that. But I would consider this to be light weathering personally. But
right.
Yeah. I have
Yeah,
an image,
I mean,
but it goes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, this is going back to the feet.
That's very light weathering. That's great.
No.
Well, some of
this is going back to the feet conversation.
Opinion. Yeah.
To when we were talking about feet being the feet more dirty than and start scaling like less and less the upper you go. But so in the story, this was a machine that was going through mud and a small shallow river. So I tackled like a lot of the mud underneath, and then it starts to just be like splashed the way the upper you go. So
Nice.
I have. Hold on.
It's all
Keep
about
talking, Nico. I'm
scale.
going to pull up some photos. Yeah, I'm going to pull up a couple pics for you guys in terms of what we're talking about with that. I think I've got something that might relate a little bit. I don't have a lot of stuff in my portfolio that's.
And I don't know if you consider if you can consider this light weathering.
It's
shady.
light for you.
It's
like
lighter. It's lighter.
It's light on the Nico scale.
The Nico sliding
Nico
scale
set
of,
the light.
of 8 to 10, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's 8 to 10.
Exactly.
It starts at 10 to 12, really.
Yeah, that's
You know what?
On a
But
10-point
you know what is
scale, it
interesting?
starts at 10. I love it.
When I was weathering this, I was forcing myself to stop and not to overgo. Like, okay, I'm gonna leave it like this. Even if I want to do more, I'm just gonna quit here now in this speed. So I do
Interesting.
consider it to be light weather.
Yeah. Michael, do you have something?
Yeah, hold on. I found one.
Oh,
I
sure.
had to find the older, lighter version, and then I've got to find. I'm going to try to
Nice.
find the same angle and keep going, guys, because I'm looking.
It
for
was, actually in the light. Oh, sorry. You were saying?
Oh, go ahead. I was going to say it was a project I came back to and redid the weathering on because I was never happy. So it does relate a little bit.
Actually,
But go ahead. Let me see if I can. I'll let
Do you
you
have
know.
something, John?
Yeah, I have actually in my. Just give me a second. I'm going to share myself.
Share yourself to the world. Yeah. Oh, I missed my soundboard. So that's under the fritz right now.
So, I think is it shared? Yeah, you can.
Where are you? There you are.
So
Ah.
basically,
Oh, I see this.
yeah, this is actually. I think
Yeah.
it's actually the cover of his magazine, Miggs Jimenez. Ammo, he actually showcased one of his build in this current project. This is actually the Matsunaga. If you can tell all around here, like, so this is slightly heavy, but the light weathering around the corner, this is what I consider, for my personal taste, aesthetically pleasing. Like just something light, right? But then afterwards, I'm not sure if that's going to show. No, it's not.
That also plays the scale,
Right here.
going tying back into our scale conversation. His marks
Exactly.
are really, really refined, and so he can go heavier in certain areas and go lighter in others, and he can play the visual aspects of it against each other as an author.
Absolutely.
So that he's doing that for you, for the viewers, so to speak, too.
So that's the
So
thing.
that
So
goes
this
back
is
to our scale comment, fellas. Everybody listening and watching.
yeah.
It's important.
Exactly. The scale is for me perfect, and I really like the small highlights. I think instead of dirtying, but highlighting and how do you call that? Like more like a paint fading in terms of like basically like you mix a little bit of your color and you with white and create a highlight
Lighten it
of
up.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's create
It's all-
scratches.
Yeah.
But then afterwards, one of the thing when at some point where he obviously, and then he went heavy on it. So you can see this one, and then the next phase was this one. So I think
But that's
that.
that.
Give me a second.
But I think that depends also on the story that you're telling, because the light weather one looks more like the machine went outside and got beat up. But
Yeah, exactly.
And the second version of it is that it has experience time. So weathering, actual rust and time effects has happened to it. So it's not necessarily just about the light weathering being just a little bit of chip. It just depends on the story that you're going for.
Absolutely.
I think,
Absolutely.
And that goes to Ariel's question
yeah.
of how do you know when to stop and what to do. A lot of it is the time scale. How is it 10 years old? Is it 2 weeks old? What's your background, or what's its background? I guess I should say.
Right.
Exactly.
No, good points, guys. Good points. Michael, are you still on deck for Sharon, or
I'm ready.
are we gonna
Yeah,
go
I'm
to
ready
the-
when you guys
Okay.
are. So
Amazing.
the first one is, this is a Tiger One from World War II. And this is for me light weathering, and this is also a period of time. I'm gonna, my memory. I'm gonna say like 2005 or 2006, where I hadn't got my skill set up, and I wasn't on point with everything and what I want. I was pretty solid with pigments. I was pretty happy with my where the wheels and the tracks. I felt pretty confident, but up top on the hull, I just didn't get a fail in the contrast that I wanted to back in that time frame. And then I took it to a show. And I think it got a silver, this one did. And then I went home and I redid it. And this is when I actually started to really embrace oil paints. And so the second photo is the second version of the tank. It's actually a terrible photo. The colors are like just out of the camera. It was me learning how to use a camera, so it's a little bit skewed in color spectrum, but you can really see the the difference between the two in terms of just kind of where my head was at on the one early photo, and then coming into, again, I could almost argue that I showed the tank maybe at combat 2 months old, and then here's a photo of it at 4 months old.
Exactly.
So that
it's aging process.
Yeah. So just
I love that dust
everybody
effect.
out there, totally, you can do this. Get away with this stuff. It's no big deal. But this to me would be a light, heavier version for my portfolio, if you will.
Amazing.
I love the dust effect that you did there. I love it.
So that's a technique stuff to talk about. A lot of guys, especially in the dust world, where I know if you're looking for kind of a nice, easy dusting technique, is you take your brushes with the pigments on it, and it's just you stipple the top of the surface. I'm pointing to the screen like you guys can see me. I love it. You stipple the top of the surface. I'll do video soon, I promise. But
no, we can see you. It's just little tiny.
Yeah, but what you do is you take the thinner, you put thinner in the airbrush, just neat, thinner in an airbrush, and then you just kind of take you turn your pressure down to like 5 psi, 6 psi, and you kind of spit the thinner down onto the surface, and it speckles the pigment. Yeah, and it also fixes it in place, and it gives it that beautiful random naturalness that's really hard to replicate. I think, Nico, on your Stormtrooper, you're using cotton swabs to kind of get the similar effect. So this is using dust pigments and then spitting thinner down onto the surface, and that liquid splatters the dust, and that's where I got that look from.
Oh, I have to do it that way unless I learn to blow really, really, really hard.
Can you blow harder, Nico?
Yeah, you could do that if you had a straw.
I'm trying to straw.
Oh, crazy.
John, let's talk about tools.
Absolutely.
We were talking about that. What do we got on tools, man?
Well, I mean, what kind of tools do you guys use? What kind of, in terms of spectrum, do you guys have a set of 100 tools? Do you guys have a set of like 10 tools go to, depending on what you're doing, right? In terms of brushes, is there different types of brushes that you're using in the various tools that you use for weathering? You can
start with Andrew on this one. I think he's had some.
Yes. So I use cheap synthetic brushes for my weathering stuff because it's hard on brushes. You don't want to be using an expensive Kolinsky Sable. You'll just ruin it. So I'm using like $2 cheap brushes. Actually, that's not one of them. There's one. Yeah, so like $2 cheap brushes like this. So there we go. Nothing too fancy because they're going to get wrecked either through the pressure or through the solvents. It's just hard on them. So that's the biggest thing. I use a lot of sponge, which is just little pieces that I rip off. I find these in packaging usually. There we go. So I've never actually gone out and bought any. Yeah. These are just little bits that come in packaging from different models. And
do you have any grades? Because
John, does he have any of these?
Of yours?
They're these guys.
I love these. They're
I actually have one of those downstairs.
Nice.
Yeah, but you got to rip it so you get a more random shape to it.
Yeah,
so I
absolutely.
rip it constantly.
I don't know
what I do with mine.
If I want to rip this, it's so nice and just brushes on my cheek.
I've been
like $1.50, Ariel. Rip it off, my friend.
Yeah, that's what I start with.
Oh, these are thick. It's high density, right? So you get a less random pattern. It's more a condensed pattern. Yeah. I've been looking to what are those natural sponge? I think they're literally
like the
kitchen sponges, makeup sponges. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
because when the density is too close, you get like a less random pattern. I like to have it like a very spread.
Well, Andrew's talking about you tear them and you pull them and you kind of destroy
exactly.
them a little bit. It'll give you different
that's how you get the random. Yeah, the ripping is what gives you the random. The different types of sponges though are good for different scales if that's an issue.
Yeah, that too.
Those are the main things that I use. Those are the main things. Unlike Nico, I don't really use cotton swabs at all for my weathering. It's mostly brush and
there's the Nico way, and then there's everybody else. So.
What is the Nico way?
Mine is the ghetto way.
You got to say it in the Colombian, the ghetto way. I love it.
But do you use a lot of? You say it's basically oils, right? That you use with your stuff.
Me?
Well, I mean everybody. I mean, Andrew
Well,
mostly. Andrew's like, because you
I
use a
put-
lot of water base, I think, and
I use everything.
good.
Chipping
Yeah,
is
but have
all
you used
acrylic.
blood? My blood?
Where does that come from?
Well,
I have
don't
used blood.
because I don't need to use your blood because I've got blood paint.
Nice.
Well
Not that
then,
it'll focus on it, but that's just blood
Boom.
paint.
But what about
I'm
pigments?
I'm gonna put it
So-
in a vial, and they're gonna brand it AO Mecha Blood for weathering. How is that for natural reason? Oh, I'm thinking it now. This is gonna be good.
But what's happening with
Wait, what?
pigments? You know, instead of oils,
I mean-
that is more like a wet approach to it. You get like a more like a drier effect to it.
The biggest thing that you do need to be careful of is what type of paint you're using and what type of washes you're using. Because if you're using an enamel paint and an enamel wash,
Yeah.
you're in for a world of trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas the enamel thinner and enamel washes, they don't affect acrylic. So if you've got an acrylic as your base, it's going to give you a good base, and then you can work with stuff on top of it. So that's the most important thing, is making sure that you don't mix the wrong things. So if you're using an enamel and then you put an oil on it and then you use a thinner, you're gonna wreck both layers pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to not tell people that one at first and let them experience it. And then,
Yeah,
and then they
yeah.
kinda go, oh man, that's not nice.
Yeah.
Oh, why don't you tell me that before?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Exactly.
chemical
So-
conversation is critical. If you don't know. Yeah,
So
big deal.
the important thing though there is the takeaway is that you're using a mixture. It's not that you use all oils, you're not using all enamels, you're not using all acrylic. It's the mixture of them that allows you to pull out the strengths of each type of paint and wash and that.
Right.
Great.
Nice. Nico, you pulled out some stuff. You just walked out of your chair and raw dogged it over to your shelf. What's going
No,
on?
it's
man?
my cat is trying to get in the room, so I have to get
Bring
out.
your cat in.
Bring
Cats
your
are
cat,
welcome
yeah.
to the show. You know.
We have a history with cats, and
Yeah, this is the hobby thing, and a cat cannot be in here.
oh god, trophies on top.
Jeez.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cats do like shelves.
Awesome.
All right, Nico. Some
So-
tools that you like using, man, aside from the Q-tip.
Well, aside from whatever the pigments or oil or washes that I use, in terms of tools, yeah, the cotton swab is very important. I also use the cheapest brushes I can get because, like Andrew said, they get destroyed. And I always have a special one to do dry brushing. So usually I grab one and I just cut it and then I make it all like
Try
Explode.
buy cheap makeup brushes. Go to Amazon and get like 16 for like $12. Get makeup brushes for dry brushing.
yeah.
Best way.
I have used that a lot of those, and then
Yeah, but buy your own. Don't steal them from your girlfriend.
Not.
No, that was
That's what I'm getting at here.
oh no, that was just the one time. She wouldn't let me anymore again. Another
Michael,
basic thing that I use a lot is
Sorry, I thought it was
Is
done.
the-
No, go on.
and also something for me that is very, very important that I use a lot is the Tamiya weathering master kits.
Mm-hmm.
I use that. I use those.
That's a wide
Yeah.
range of
They're great.
colors. Yeah. But this one is, like I said, is more of a dry pigment. So application is more like it gives more like a sandy effect to it, right?
Well, it depends on how you're gonna use because it applies like makeup does, like
Yeah, it's
like
a
that,
dust.
But you can also, with water, you can make it into
Little
for more
speckles and all that
detailing.
stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then with the brush in the back, you can just add like dust, like actual just dust all over. I love those. So, but now I'm transitioning a little bit to this. So, I'm still learning. So I'm just experimenting with a whole bunch of
We
things.
all are.
In terms of brushes and elements, it's a lot of cotton swabs, cheap brushes, and cheap hobby knives.
Nice. Call yourself the
Yes, I
dollar
use that.
store.
Actually, I do go to
price
Michael's
points,
for
yeah.
my hobby knife.
Yeah.
I do go to Michael's for the hobby knife.
And Michael, again, weapons of choice. What do you have, man?
I was, I've again, this is always one of those, it's always in the interview selection of questions. What's your tool selection? I mean, what are you doing? What are you using? there's definitely everything we've talked about. But the one, I tell you what, I couldn't do anything that I do without a paper towel.
Oh yeah.
This is so underrated. This is so underrated.
I use my shirt.
Yeah.
Is that a side seek shirt? Oh my god.
But there's the process of, where you got your paintbrush and it's got, so I try to explain to the general world out there that don't be intimidated, number one, with the entirety of the conversation. It's thin chemical on a brush. It doesn't matter if it's enamel, whatever you're going to use, whatever you use. So the point is, why this is important is because when you load this up, you put your paint and your thinner on this, whatever it is, no matter. You unload it on the paper towel first before you touch the model. There's almost no time when I personally will take a fully loaded brush and touch a model. Like, it just doesn't happen, even when you're doing the wash, because I have a whole conversation about applying a pin wash properly. So the reality is, without the paper towel, is kind of the middleman here to get the transaction done, if you will. It's my PayPal account, is this guy, because I go from the brush to the model, and it always goes through this guy first. He takes his percentage.
Right.
And the beauty of this is, to use that analogy, sometimes I just want to unload about 10% of the liquid out of it. Sometimes I want to get this almost dry. Well, this is what I use. So one of the key tools of weathering is always have something on your desk to absorb the stuff out of the brush so that you control the amount going on in the model. That's 90%. So the pencil conversation is, the pencils kind of have already done that for you a little bit, if that's a weird way to talk about it. They kind of have controlled the amount that comes out of the pencil, which is why they're so controllable, which makes them so effective. So it's the same thing with the paintbrush and the paper towel. You're doing the same exact, you're controlling your quantity. And chemical quantity is probably 95% of all weathering, is how much chemicals you're putting down on the model.
Because it's an additive art, right? It's an additive art where you're always adding more until you get to the point where you're satisfied.
Yeah, it's almost all additive. I think hairspray is the only reductive one we really discuss as a technique. Everything almost is always additive. So it's important to be able to, if you're going to get good at this, if you want to be good at this, it's control. It's control the quantity of the chemicals you're putting down in your model. It's literally that simple. Yeah. So, and the paper towel or whatever you're using, whatever absorbs for you, I just find that these work really well.
Nice.
Is a key element. It's rarely ever talked about, and it's one of those things that most like pro dudes, like they just do it and they don't tell people what's going on, and you just see them slapping shit on the model. They're like, well, wait a minute. So the kid loads his brush up, starts slapping it on the model, and it looks, and he's like, wait, this doesn't look anything like what he's doing over here. Well, it's because Sparky's not telling you he's doing an in between step. PayPal's taking his percentage out.
Some people I've noticed, Michael, use their hands or their nails to like offload some of that paint. Is that something?
Yeah, it's the same principle, same basic principles. You're unloading the brush to refine the chemical volume that's remaining to paint or weather whatever you're doing, whether it's figure painting or whatever. That's just because it's easy, because they're like super tiny, like hello, and it's just super quick and easy if you wipe your thumb and then you're holding it, you're wiping your thumb and you're painting. It's the same basic principle.
Oh, that's amazing. Good. I mean, that's one of the greatest advice. Like it's always like
how to approach it. I just call it the paper towel, but what Andrew pull up, you've got to have a medium in between. Yeah.
I use them a lot when I'm doing dry brushing. When I'm doing dry brushing, I use paper towels.
Well, that's how you make the brush dry. Is you have to wipe off all the paint, so you need to have just to even get the thing dry. Yeah.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. All right, now I think one of the thank you everyone. I think that's very informative, right?
It is. I learned some good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. One of the questions we ask you guys to gather 3 images of your favorite builds across the internet. If you have anything that is
other people's builds.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's the other people's builds?
I didn't get that question. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, we can start with Andrew. Andrew, my man, would you have some of the builds? And I mean, it's a build review, right? So we're gonna, you can go through the process that you like to it, and what kind of process the person did.
Oh, I see what this is going. Okay, that's what you were talking about. I'm like, build review.
That's it.
Oh, okay. So we get to critique other people's work and talk shit about them. Yes,
exactly.
I'm down, guys. Like, it's gonna be good.
You might find that hard. I found some pretty good stuff out there.
Oh yeah, well, it's too weathered.
Let me check. You know what? Let me check out Mecha's Instagram.
There's no weather there. It's all straight builds.
Amazing.
Ooh, what do we got here, Andrew?
Oh, hello. Holy shit, that's good.
Yeah, is it not though? Like, this is amazing stuff. So one of the things I mentioned before is picking the right subject matter too for the weathering, and this is where grunt suits work the best in my opinion. And this is why you see so many really good Zaku builds that are weathered, and that is because let's assume that because they're mass produced, they're using cheaper materials that are more susceptible to oxidization or damage or other types of weathering and degradation. So this is the 148. So this is the mega size Zaku that someone's done. And it's just amazing the work that this guy's done on it. And I'll go through a few of the different shots of it just to see the detailing.
That's too weathered. That's my comment on that. Yeah. Way too weathered. Way too weathered. Everything. You know what? See that little speck?
Yeah.
Too weathered.
Yeah. It's absolutely gorgeous work that this guy has done on it.
Oh wow!
So this is one of my favorite builds by far. It's a mega size, which gave him lots of room to work on it. But this is the best mega size I've ever seen, even without like the up detailing that he's done. Just the weathering on it, it looks so good. It's so precise. So yeah, this is one of my favorites for sure. Here is just some of the different inspirations that I've really taken for doing like scratches and stuff. So for miniatures, and I've brought it out, but looking at the middle shot there in particular, the top middle one. And that you can see just that started off as a completely flat surface, and look at all the depth that's been added through paint alone. And that's unreal to me. Like that, just how much you can do just with a brush in terms of weathering to really add depth and character to a piece.
That's light play mostly though. It's not like they physically because like I'm looking at the first image, there's no physical damage to it. It's all like like brushwork, or is it?
Yeah, it's entirely just brushwork. There's no physical damage. But we are going to get to that too in a later photo. And then the one next to that too, I really like just the scratching. That's one thing that I'm really trying to work on too, is getting scratch effects like that, which I think you have to go, Michael probably knows best. We probably have to go at it with like a wire brush of some sort with a hairspray technique to really get a good effect like that, I think. But something I have not yet tried, but I'd like to. I just need to find something appropriate to do it on.
You could do it on me. Wait, what?
These are nice here. The ones I've pulled out here, these are all by Wilson PL Art, who showed that image before. But one of the things I like about his art here, and this is sort of what I'm trying to do with a lot of my stuff, is blending sort of the miniature painting style with the armor painting style, and sort of taking a little bit of both. And it's not necessarily to make it
that more in today's sci-fi world for sure.
Yeah, and I don't want to say you're trying to make...
I've seen them. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that you're trying necessarily to make it more realistic. You're trying to make it hyper realistic.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what I would use to describe this, is like hyper real. Like the one in the right in particular, and just is showing you too just an example of the AK pencils, which we were talking about earlier. So that was done with it. So was the part of the little skimmer there, the green piece, and so is all that rust. It's all done with the AK pencils, just to give people an idea of the potential they have. But yeah, I really like mixing sort of the miniature painting style, like you see in the blue there. We've got sort of the chips and the highlights and the different tonal variances on the armor plate itself, but then also adding in with the pencil to add in the oranges and the streaking and stuff. And then here's the last image here that I really want to go through. So all the other stuff we've looked at so far is all about taking something that was completely flat and adding weathering to it. But these ones here, the people, sorry, these are two different people. I don't know who they did them. But these ones were weathered by adding physical damage and adding subtractive work onto them as well, which personally, I don't do this as a general rule. What about you guys? Do you ever really do this and go and start hacking away at it to add extra damage?
I did that on my GWC. I chopped it up a lot. I used the curving knife for that.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, you cut off on that one. What was that?
Oh, did I cut off? I'm sorry. Yeah, I personally don't do a lot of battle damage myself. To me, it's a high risk, risk reward situation. You got to be real careful. It can ruin them all faster than probably almost any single thing you try to do is battle damage. So,
absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I like these ones so well. Is that
looks like it was that looks like it was like how rust metal deteriorates out and flakes away.
Yeah.
Like I like that. It looks like whatever happened.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah, and then I love all of the scratches that were done on the AC guy here too. All these like very small cuts into it, rather than painting the scratches on.
Yeah.
These ones are physically cut into the model.
And a good wash into it, and then you can create a different dimension to it, different depth.
Yeah, help to pick
different.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, there has to be something to shade them
Exactly.
in order to give them the
Yeah.
pop you need. But the one thing again that we mentioned right at the top of this too is you look at the colors that are chosen for all of these, right? So we've got off-white, we've got like a yellow color here, we've got a bright green, we've got a bright bluey color, we've got a bright yellowy sand color, we've got bright. So if you want to do weathering using brighter colors, it just works better. Like whites and off-whites
It's more visually
and that are the
appealing, yeah.
best. Yeah, it gives you that contrast, and it gives you
Yeah.
more options too as to what you can use on it for the chipping and for the rust. Like if you're trying to do a rusty red suit, it's going to be a hard time.
Yeah.
I don't want to say you can't do it, but you're in for a hard time.
Yeah.
So
Certain colors
Color
will back you in
selection
the corner
matters.
for sure. Certain colors do back you in
Yeah.
the corner. You have to be careful.
yeah,
Amazing.
Nice. Michael, do you have any to share, or Nico to add to that?
Go ahead, Nico, if you got
Okay, you want to
something.
go first? I do.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I don't have like a favorite. Is what I did is I picked samples.
But
of
Michael's
what
right
I
here. You
like.
should just take some of his
Yeah,
work.
this
and
was about to
just
say. Damn it.
slap it on the wall.
Nico, I gave you 20 bucks.
I have a
to get my
Sazabi.
stuff. Like, come on, man. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
I have a Sazabi. I have a Dom.
Just go like this. So my
Yeah, that's-
favorite is this guy.
I feel like I need to get my book off the shelf now.
Nice.
No, but the ones that I did is that I pick samples that I found of where I want to take when I'm weathering Gundam and where I'm want to get to when I start doing more dioramas. You have to understand, I didn't start this hobby with Gunpla. I started it with first with the Star Wars and sci-fi, and I got in more when I started learning weathering. I was looking at tanks and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Especially World War II dioramas. I love looking at those. I love when I go to competitions. I always spend a lot of time looking at all those builds. I love them. So what I want to do is combine both worlds into one. Like, let me just show you here. Like this kind of stuff. See?
Oh, cool. Like using
There's a
environments and
combination.
all that stuff. Yeah.
And all the weathering and techniques that have to go with this in terms of scale and everything.
I just snapped
But
back
this
in.
is what I want to, like, what I want to go with, what I want to create in, like, this one, for example. For me, when I do Gundams and I do want to create a weather build, I don't think as the machines that you see in the series when they're in space. I want them to be on Earth with gravity as a problem. Because it's when you do weathering here, it's more fun than when you're doing weathering from outer space. In space, they only get crashed and stuff like that. And like these kind of scenarios in the deep jungles or in a city scenario. Let's see if I have one. See this
like
one.
that.
I love this.
Yeah. That's cool.
So this
I
is
like it when
kind
the
of stuff I love.
environmental colors like matches or reflects with the actual build. This one is a really cool example.
So this is
very cool.
what I want to go. Like what I want to take things. And this here. See, and I kind of started like I've been trying to, like my first diorama was this. So it was kind of trying to emulate something like that, like an actual war kind of scenario. This is something I did a long time ago, and obviously this one that I showed you before. So
Yeah.
I want to combine both things to do little not big little dioramas of war, and according to that, all the weathering that is going to be done to them will be reflecting that.
Interesting.
No, I like your samples. Yeah.
But when I look at samples and stuff like for inspiration or just for fun, or when I see them pop into my wall, on my Instagram wall, I love looking at this kind of stuff.
Yeah, because it's like a lot of like visual, like tickling. It
Realistic.
tickles your eyeball right behind your eyeballs, kind of deal.
like
Awesome.
the realistic aspect of the hobby. I want to
Interesting.
actually this year or next year, I'm gonna try to do tanks. As I know there's a whole different world of building. Like there's more rules. It's not as
You have
much
to glue
freedom as it
everything.
is
Number
with
one.
this.
All
I'm
glue.
building.
No,
I'm building a motorcycle next. So yeah, expanding to outside of it, but it won't be weather, guys. It's
Yeah.
Nice.
But there's also like the weathering has to reflect the actual time frame of that actual model tank. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
restrictions, and I find that interesting.
But you have a lot of
I want
reference.
to try
though. I
that.
mean, at least you have a realistic photo reference. You can lean
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
So I want to mix both of those things, and also go into that. I want to be a model, like a model builder
Hey, I know
that
that
tries
one.
everything.
Yeah. Ah, thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nico. Yeah, like
Amazing.
looking forward to your future builds,
So,
man.
just like this build might be familiar to you guys.
I've seen it.
I've seen
It's
it.
okay. It's okay. It's
This-
okay.
I've seen it before.
This is actually Andrew's build. Mecha Painter
Oh,
right here.
we get to critique Andrew's build. Ooh.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're supposed to put our.
It's
our top
over
three.
weathered. Get rid of it.
But basically, I want
That's
to.
actually
What?
That's a good example of light weather.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So I wanna continue with your conversation of hyper realistic and light weathering, where the colors are not darker, right? The colors are not. It's where the colors are actually highlighted, and the scratches are more highlighted. And I actually like this style. If you can see something benign, right? There's like a lot of less small scratches because I'm not sure if you can tell. The actual model is actually like he's getting scratched left and right, and basically creates a narrative into the conversation went to the build where there's a lot of scratches around them. It is on Mars, so you can see that the dirt is red and creates a good narrative as well. But like I said, hyper realism, basically the highlights of the corners. That for me, that's probably my favorite style. That creates a good effect, and the grim is really well done all around the edges where it's meant to be. Like the suit is not dirty, the crease is a bit accumulated, and I think that's nice. That's cool.
Yeah, this is my first time trying to sort of panel line with a non-traditional color. Actually, I don't even remember what I used to panel line it. I think it was probably hand painted, to be honest. I think that's what I used, was just hand painted the lines in.
And then the chipping has been highlighted as well, and I think that's probably one of my favorite. And hyper realistic style that you were mentioning.
I love this.
Cool.
This was in Anime North, right?
No, this GBWC.
No, this GBWC 2017.
It was at Anime North. It was at Anime North too. Couple of years ago, yeah.
Also, in the same style.
You got first prize there.
I think the choice of colors was great. And I think that gives a lot of style, but like the chest area for me, it creates like a non-traditional scratches, I can say, a lot of hues. That's something very interesting I liked about it. It's like we've been talking about, like the unevenness of the chipping, right? It's all equal everywhere, and that is unrealistic. But you have to keep in mind that this suit has been thrown around a lot, so I'm not sure. I don't know if it's realistic or not in this thing. Another thing that is when you were talking about battle damage, right? Purposely creating battle damage. Here you can tell he literally hacked it away and replaced it with a metal backing that creates a really effect.
Cool.
So you can really go at it. It doesn't matter what you do, but in the end, it creates a story by backing it up. So I'm not sure. I don't know. I can hear my voice in the back.
Somebody's feedback loop.
Yes, Ghost.
Yeah, and again afterwards, when can we change? No, I have to go here. Basically, the method on how to create the highlights. For me, this is light weathering. You see, like obviously this kit has been modified like 20 steps further, but I think at this step it really brings out my personal aesthetics of weathering, which is like light highlights. I basically, if you go back to who's the artist that was creating the panels?
Michael Rinaldi.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm just gonna
the second best guy. But
you know, like Nico.
You know, like you were showing like the chipping examples. One of them was basically discoloration. And basically, the
Right.
highlights is one of the paint discoloration that really makes me
it's
really
paint
happy.
usually goes lighter when you scuff a paint without cutting through to the metal.
Yeah.
It'll go
Yeah,
like a lighter
exactly.
tone.
The step in
Yeah.
between the rust and like the first step when like basically it's first flight, right? You hit a few rocks on the way and whatever, and that is my
Like a tree branch will scratch the paint, but it won't cut through the paint.
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
hope you don't
just
hit
the
rocks
clear
on your
coat.
first flight, though.
Right?
Yeah, that's
Rookie. Bunch of dudes.
yeah.
Hayden is saying
My
using
AirPods
light
are dying,
highlights
guys,
as
by the way.
chipping.
I don't know if you can hear
is
me
a
okay.
great idea.
If-
Yeah, you're still
my-
you're still
My
good.
AirPods are dying on me too. By the way.
No problem. Yeah, no, Hayden's gonna learn a few things from me. Just kidding. The
Awesome.
amateur here.
Do we want to get to Michael before his battery dies?
I'm getting a thingy in here. Let's go to full screen real quick. And there's a Instagram page because I didn't have that question. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared, but I
No, you know what? I think I did not
Don't
ask
worry,
it
that's
correctly.
Ariel's fault.
Yeah,
It's my fault.
That's
My
Ariel's
fault.
Yeah.
No, it's
On
cool.
that one.
It's cool. I don't mind being on the spot. So this
Any mishaps
Instagram
is
guy
Ariel's
here, this is a repost dude, but he does a pretty good job of it. He's pretty honest and shows people and puts the name. You know, I'm a big guy. You got to give credit to the authors, but this Mech Safari guy, there's some dudes in Japan on Twitter that aren't. You know, you have to be on Twitter, and I'm not. But when they post them here, I can't blow this up. But if you can see this, like, I love what this guy's doing. This is Ju Coco 4 on Twitter. There's a lot of salt chipping in here, is where you see those little specks. I like this style of weathering. Like if we're going to talk about, I think it's like, I'm just going to call it like a Japanese mecha style where it's kind of Kondo-esque, where it's not really anime correct or anything like this, but it's got that Kondo flavor of just 2 or 3 colors and a little bit of tones and just a little bit of rust and dirt. I really appreciate kind of what he's trying to do with this stuff. This is a different type of weathering. I think personally, it's not heavy on streaks or grime like that. It's not very realistic, maybe in terms of kind of what you see in the real world, but it's a very good storytelling one. And then there's another one in here too. It's kind of a little bit stuff like this, you know, where they're
thank God. No, I was gonna say, am I following that? Because like I better be following that because there's a lot of good stuff.
I mean, you'll probably see Mech Safari.
I have them. Yeah, because like I've seen some of this before. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another dude, a Katoya or something, I think his name is. No, this is the same. But this kind of style, I really like that style a little bit. It's kind of, it's part of it's the custom work, of course, but plays into it. But this page is just full of dudes just doing all sorts of crazy weather stuff. Like, you know, like this stuff here is, like this isn't me at all, but I just love what he's doing.
Yeah.
Here's Katoya. Katoya01 on Twitter. This guy's insane. Like all this stuff is really cool. I see a lot of Andrew's work, like with his pale blue-gray RX dude over he showed earlier. That style is in there. He's going down that road and some of the stuff he's doing. I see this happening a lot more today as the Japanese influence comes out. Because these dudes play in a world like they're only in their own little Twitter world. Like they don't publish anywhere else.
Yeah. Twitter, Asian, Japan, and all that Pacific area, like builders in Twitter is ridiculous. And I can't read or understand what they're saying unless you translate it. But like,
I'm completely lost all the time. Well, Zach Aurelius, you know, our buddy Zach, you know, has a show, and him and oh gosh, who's his friend? He's always doing these critiques.
Josh. Yeah,
Mr. Josh Dara, who did that.
This was probably the best mech I saw, I think, in a long time. This Star Hobby dude.
Yeah, this is actually the Aura Zach winner of 2019. I don't know. It's actually
I still look at this thing and I go, what is going on? Yeah, this is one of the more impressive things I've ever seen in terms of Gundam weathering. So
yeah, Nico.
Actually, Zach just finished a project that I saw, and he was really, really good.
His Custer, his little Mac, blue and yellow one, that was nice too.
The one you're reviewing right now, the Kshatriya, it actually is considered and highly debatable the best model of 2020.
Debatable. I've seen.
It won first place in the best competition in the world, so it's debatable. Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks for sharing that. Lots of good stuff. If you guys are not following Mecha Safari, check that out as well, because like it has a lot of cool stuff.
You know, I don't mind repost sites if you definitely give the artist credit. You know, especially if they link them and they're on it. Like those dudes that do all the Gundam stuff where they're just showing people's artwork and they're not giving, I get really mad. I get really mad.
Man, that's a separate. We have an actual topic for that actually later on. Michael, if you don't mind being on that one, I think we would get your voice out there for
I
real.
definitely
You know what grinds my gears?
That's one of the biggest things ever is credit. You've got to give people credit.
Absolutely.
Whether you read somebody here or did something here, and dude, it's one of my number one things. One of my pet peeves.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Amazing.
See the salt technique? I invented this.
Beautiful.
Yeah, the hairspray's not mine. I mean, I often get credit. People say, but no, the Phil Distinctus who came up with it and shared it. 07, I was at the show. They should I always make sure I give Phil credit. I mean, it's just a big deal.
I know, and that's consistent with all your other interviews. That's why I just want to throw it out there. I knew you'd catch it, Michael.
It's a big deal to me. Yeah, you have to give credit to your bros. It's all bros before hoes. Just give the credit, man.
That's right. You heard it. I'm clipping that. Somebody clip that, man. I want that as my ringtone from now on.
You have to. You have to give the peeps the cred. It's a big
amazing.
Thing. Yeah.
John, what do we got next, man?
It's great. I mean, it's great. It's been great content, right? Close to the end, I think that one very big question that we want to ask everyone here: if you had an advice for a beginner, one advice, what would it be?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
In weathering, yeah. Let's go with Nico first because he's been itching to verbalize his thoughts. What do we got?
Well, for me, will be don't be afraid to experiment. But if you're gonna try techniques and stuff, try them on cheap kits first. Like dig your high grades and before you do like an expensive one, and experiment a lot. It takes a while to master or whatever certain techniques. But don't be afraid to go and experiment. That's in terms of weathering, yeah. But I do advise try them on cheaper kits first.
Nice. Thank you for that. Let's go with Andrew.
Yeah, sort of like what Nico said there. Your first tries, you're going to overdo it. Everyone does. You always overdo it your first time, but you have to figure out how far you can go to figure out how to tone it back again. Mm-hmm. And the way I see it is if you overdo it, that's just more practice you got in on one kit. You were just making better use of that kit by getting more practice on it. And the next time, you'll do it less. And don't be afraid of overdoing it the first few times because that's what happens.
Ooh, very sound advice. Michael, up on black.
I would say in the same vein, I treat this like sports. So if you're a first-time soccer player, you've got to kick the ball 1,000 times to get in the goal to learn how to do it. And a lot of what we do is repetitive task. It's just embrace the fact that you don't know what you're doing. You're going to suck at it. Don't fear the mistakes. But again, be smart. Unless you got daddy's credit card, then keep it to HG, buy the $10, $15 backlog kits of other people, but, and I appreciate the don't fear the mistake comment is really great. A lot of guys get really worked up about, oh my God, I'm going to weather this and I'm going to screw it up. And I've done all this work. No, you haven't. You haven't done anything yet, my friend. So embrace it. Because the dude that did the Kasatria that we just showed, let me tell you, that guy's put some hours into some model building, and you have to put the time in. This is not going to be if you want to go to realistic weathering or hyper realistic, it's not going to happen fast. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes repetitive tasks and multiple kits. And so be prepared. You're going to need some paintbrushes, you're going to need some stuff. So, but treat it like sports. I think always practice. Experience comes from the projects. Practice comes from sitting down and just doing a wash on a little scrap thing over and over and over and over again. Different colors, different. Airbrushing is huge, and I just can't emphasize enough that you've got to sit down and just spray stuff. Don't worry about it being a model or anything, but just learn how to spray stuff and everything. So.
Absolutely.
Right on. Nico, last thing here.
Yeah, I remember that one of the first models that I took to a competition when I did weathering, I did a lot of it on it, and it ended up looking like baked bread.
Baked bread. And I'm getting hungry. I might actually eat something after this. Guys, we're going to do a quick shout out to all our sponsors, and then we're going to say our final words with our guests here. Big shout out to Let's see here. Let's start with our community. Side 6. You just saw Nicolas Tejada Sanchez sporting one of our shirts here. Side 6 is an awesome mecha group. You can find us at facebook.com/groups/side6. Also, this show is powered by MSMN Studio. Check them out, guys, msmnstudio.com. And they have a lot of kits, materials for your building needs. So check them out. Maybe find something.
And check out their kits on display, too.
Yeah, I heard there's a kit there that we just saw on.
Plugs, I love it.
Right? Also, guys, don't forget to check out USA Gundam Store. This show is powered by them as well. usagundamstore.com, and save when you use my discount code AOMECHA10. And I know I plug this in. AO Mecha Live will return season 3. That is still in the works. So, but yeah, AO Mecha Live supporting this show as well. And all you guys, thank you so much for that. Let's go back to the show here, guys. So for people who want to find you guys on social media or where you guys are most active on, can you just give us where we would find you guys most active? Let's start with Andrew here.
Mecha Painter on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And the content on all 3, some of it's shared, some of it's unique to each platform. So check out each.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Nico, where do they find you?
Well, I have a Facebook page and Instagram. My Instagram is Nico Tejada78. And my Facebook page, if you type my name, it will show Nicolas Tejada Sanchez. But if you follow groups like the GUNPLA network, I post there a lot, so you will probably have seen a lot of my posts.
and that community that's on your shirt, don't forget that guy.
And also, if you on side 6, you will see probably 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 posts that I do.
A day.
An hour. Awesome. Michael Rinaldi, thank you again for coming in. Where could we find you and where could people reach you and your work and all that? Oh my God. You're out. We can't hear you.
Well,
You can find him at Rinaldi Studio Press.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can find him in each of his books.
Yeah. Single model number 3 is the Sazabi, the one where he recovers. Exactly. Perfect.
Let's do a group one. Hang on.
Yeah,
so
1, 2, 3.
Go get all your books.
Don't forget to check out his book.
There we go.
SN03.
Yeah.
Lots of books. You got tank art as well. Don't forget these guys.
You might find us all staring at construction equipment like.
Michael Rinaldi, I do have your link here, so you can find him on facebook.com/Rinaldi Studio, instagram.com/Rinaldi Studio, and of course his website rinaldistudiopress.com. And you can also order his books over at USA Gundam Store. Again, you could use my discount code AOMECHA10 to save and get this guy paid so he could make more books and stuff that are awesome. Unfortunately, Michael doesn't have his mic. And guys, thank you so much, John. Like, in the final words for our guests here.
Well, thank you guys for coming, sharing your amazing knowledge and your amazing skills and your philosophy of the hobby as well. That is like priceless.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Pleasure.
Guys, for me, I just want to say thank you for all the people that are watching online, both on YouTube and Twitch. Thank you for tuning in. New show coming up this Thursday, 9 p.m. New time. This Thursday coming up is 7 p.m. You heard it here first. We have a special guest about a special contest that you guys have to freaking check out. It's going to be awesome. And we have one of
the other side of the oceans.
Exactly. We have an international guest next week, and one of the champions is actually sitting in one of these boxes. That's right, it's me. I am the winner. Okay, guys, thank you again, and till next show, hopefully you guys are keeping well, keeping safe, and we'll catch you next time. Say bye to everybody, guys.
Bye, everyone.
See you
bye,
guys.
Yeah.
Oops, not that one. This one. Whee!
Stream launching soon.
Nope, the other one.
Oh, we keep talking and we can still be heard.
Probably, yeah. I was gonna let it go for another minute, but like now
You didn't say to mute.
This is fun. This is fun. This is
No,
actually like
you know
a
what?
post-
Let's talk
post-
shit, man. That
Yeah, that's
Michael
it.
Rinaldi guy, he can't talk back right now, man. That guy, let me tell you, man, the audacity of how much he weathers, quote unquote weathers. Let me tell you, man.
Quality,
Wait, hold on. I
Quality.
might be back.
Oh crap, he's back. Oh, Michael is awesome, by the way. He's great.
Nate Charge,
Oh, great.
He's my favorite guy ever, and
It takes
I'm
like
so
2
glad
minutes
he's
for them to
here.
get like a half a charge.
This is how you kiss ass 101.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
The seminars
All right,
are amazing, to be honest. Like,
Oh, thank
We're
you.
still on, by the way. We're still live, are we?